Chapter 199. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that cannot be found online here. It turned out that the court had found out about the young lady and confirmed that her surname was Gu, not Lu. They also heard that she was the daughter of a marquis. As for which marquis, they were not sure. But were there many marquis with the surname Gu in the world? Between March and June last year, she had coincidentally appeared in that county town. Consort Shu could guess that it was Gu Jinyu even if she used her toes. Imperial concubine Shu poked her head lightly. "Look at you, this child. This is a good thing, not a bad thing. Why didn't you say it? If you had said it earlier, your father would not have made such a big mistake. He let the Ministry of War ride on his head." Gu Jinyu opened her mouth. Imperial concubine Shu smiled and said, "When you were young, you liked to draw on paper. The fifth prince also drew with you. At that time, I thought that you were all thinking about useless things. Now it seems that I have misunderstood you." Granny Chi smiled. "Your Highness, do you still remember when the county princess asked someone to improve the food box when she was young?" Consort Shu held her temples and smiled in realization. "Ah, I almost forgot if you didn't mention it." "Yes. Is that food box still there?" Granny Chi smiled. "Yes. I will keep it." Consort Shu ordered, "Quickly bring it over." Granny Chi went to the storeroom and took out an old food box that Gu Jinyu had used when she was young. The food boxes in the palace were layered, like a walking steamer. Gu Jinyu felt that this kind of food box was inconvenient. She said that if she wanted to take something from the bottom, she had to take the top as well. It would be better if each layer could be separated. She took apart Consort Shu's snack box and made a fixed frame, but it could be pulled open from the side to have several small drawers. An 8-year-old child's hands were not too skillful. It was all done by her mouth, and the eunuchs did according to her ideas. At that time, she even received a few words of praise from His Majesty. This kind of food box also existed among the people at that time. As it was not warm enough, it was usually only used to hold snacks. Gu Jinyu had never seen it before. She had thought of it herself. His Majesty thought it was rare for an 8-year-old girl to be so intelligent. It was also from then on that Consort Shu discovered Gu Jinyu's talent and often summoned Gu Jinyu to the palace to study with the fifth prince. Concubine Shu whispered, "Tell Auntie the truth. Did you do it on purpose?" Gu Jinyu stared at her blankly. Imperial concubine Shu smiled happily. "That's true. The effect of doing this is indeed much better than revealing your identity from the start. You have successfully caused a sensation in the imperial court and also caught His Majesty's attention. The more indifferent you are to fame and fortune, the more His Majesty appreciates you." Gu Jinyu wanted to say something but stopped. What did she do to change the wind direction? She had never heard of it before. "Nyang Nyang, the thing you wanted is here. Where do you want it?" A young eunuch walked over with a piston bellows. Gu Jinyu looked at Consort Shu in confusion. Consort Shu said to Gu Jinyu, "Come, tell Auntie how to use this thing. Later, if your Majesty wants to chat with this consort will have a common topic with your Majesty." This bellows had been taken from the Ministry of War. Nowadays, there were many such bellows. Gu Jinyu had never seen one before, but she was indeed very smart. She had someone bring over tools and personally dismantled the bellows. Then, she put it back in its original place. Then, she understood the principle behind this kind of wind-blowing technique. The bellows had 3 levels. The first level was where the lever was. There was a wind outlet at each end of the bellows. There was a movable valve at the wind outlet. When the lever was pushed, the first valve at the back opened. Wind poured in from there. The second valve automatically closed. Wind was forced from the wind outlet under the second valve into the second small bellows on the second level. Under the small bellows was an air outlet that was connected to the boiler. When the lever was pulled back, the second valve at the front opened. Wind poured in from the second valve. The first valve closed. Wind poured in from the first valve into the first small bellows on the second level. The first small bellows also had an air outlet that was also connected to the boiler. The two small bellows were independent and did not affect each other. The only thing they had in common was that they were both connected to the boiler. They could both send wind into the boiler. This kind of double-acting piston bellows produced wind regardless of whether it was pushed or pulled. It did not waste any physical strength or movement. This design was too exquisite. Gu Jinyu was in awe. Compared to this, her own food box paled in comparison. No, her own food box could not even be considered a small magician. But, did His Majesty and the people from the Ministry of War make a mistake? This was not something she had done. How did you think of this method? Imperial concubine Shu asked. Gu Jinyu thought that Imperial concubine Shu was talking about the bellows. Just as she was about to confess, Imperial concubine Shu interrupted her. Not saying who you are, just leaving behind a blueprint. Afterwards, leave some clues. Surname Gu, connection to Marquis Ding and Fu. It does not feel deliberate at all. You are truly worthy of being someone this one taught. The focus of the Imperial concubines was always different from normal people. Gu Jinyu was very puzzled. Was there really a mistake somewhere? Marquis Ding and Fu only had 2 girls. One was her, but she had never drawn any blueprints. It couldn't be that wild girl who grew up in the countryside. She couldn't even read a single word. How could she have made such an exquisite tool? While Gu Jinyu was puzzled, Imperial concubine Shu suddenly patted her hand. The Imperial Garden's 4 seasons osmanthus has bloomed. Come, let's go pick some. In a moment, we'll have the Imperial kitchen make osmanthus cakes and bring some for your father. Gu Jinyu sighed and was pulled to the Imperial Garden by Imperial concubine Shu. The flowers in the Imperial Garden bloomed beautifully. They were colorful and contended with each other. Coincidentally, they were not the only ones who came to admire the flowers. Imperial concubine Zhuang was also present. Imperial concubine Zhuang was a few years older than Imperial concubine Shu. She was not as beautiful as Imperial concubine Shu, but she was still dignified and elegant. She had an outstanding temperament. Older sister Imperial concubine, what a coincidence. Imperial concubine Shu smiled and greeted her. Imperial concubine Zhuang returned half a bow. The two were both first-rank official concubines, but Imperial concubine was the head of the 4 concubines. Her status was naturally higher than Imperial concubine Shu's. Gu Jinyu also bowed to Imperial concubine Zhuang. Greetings to Imperial concubine. Imperial concubine Zhuang gracefully smiled. So it is County Princess Hui. There is no need for County Princess Hui. Thank you, Imperial concubine. Gu Jinyu rose. Gu Jinyu often entered the palace and had seen Imperial concubine Zhuang several times. But for some reason, she felt that Imperial concubine Zhuang was particularly gentle this time. Imperial concubine Zhuang's gentle gaze fell on Gu Jinyu's face. County Princess Hui is of marriageable age. You haven't talked about marriage yet, right? Aunt. It was Zhuang Yueshi who came over with a basket of freshly picked flowers. She saw Imperial concubine Shu and Gu Jinyu and bowed. Gu Jinyu was a county princess, but she did not dare to accept Zhuang Yueshi's bow in front of Imperial concubine Zhuang. She also bowed slightly to return the bow. Aunt, what were you talking about just now? Zhuang Yueshi asked. Imperial concubine Zhuang smiled. We were talking about County Princess Hui's marriage. Speaking of which, you are 1 year older than County Princess Hui. You haven't talked about marriage yet. In the Zhao Kingdom, women would only consider marriage after reaching the age of 15. Most of the wealthy families were not in a hurry. Some women would get married at the age of 18 or 19. As for men, most of them would only get married after reaching the age of 20. Why did Imperial concubine Zhuang suddenly ask about Gu Jinyu's marriage? Her intention was somewhat thought-provoking. Imperial concubine Shu smiled and said, "Not yet." Imperial concubine Zhuang said, "I heard that she has an older sister who is already married." The smile on Gu Jinyu's face froze. Imperial concubine Shu looked as usual. My sister grew up in the countryside and married early. Since Imperial concubine Zhuang already knew, there was no point in hiding it. It was better to say it openly. Imperial concubine Zhuang smiled and sighed. Imperial concubine Shu, you have to be more careful. She is such a good niece. I don't know which family's brat will take advantage of her. Imperial concubine Shu was amused by Imperial concubine Zhuang. They teased Gu Jinyu for a while before returning to their respective palaces. Imperial concubine Zhuang and Imperial concubine Shu's topic always revolved around Gu Jinyu. Zhuang Yueshi, who was at the side, seemed to be neglected. This was the first time that Gu Jinyu was the protagonist in front of a favored concubine. On the way back to Chongchun Palace, Imperial concubine Shu touched the buyao in her hairbun and said proudly, "It seems that Imperial concubine Zhuang also knows about your invention of the bellows. Her news is really fast. I happened to hear it when I went to deliver snacks to His Majesty. I don't know how she found out. Humph, it must be someone around His Majesty who told her." Gu Jinyu suddenly realized that the reason why Imperial concubine Zhuang's attitude towards her was so abnormal was because of this? Was the power of a bellow so great? Gu Jinyu suddenly didn't have the courage to confess to Imperial concubine Shu. Why did Imperial concubine suddenly ask about my marriage? Could it be that she wanted to set her up with Prince En? Imperial concubine Shu said carelessly, "Most likely she wants to win you over. After the crown prince got Wen Linlang, he was like a tiger with wings. I'm afraid she wants to imitate Empress Xiao and find a good wife for her son. But Prince Ning already had a wife. If she married him, wouldn't she only be a concubine?" Princess Ning was not a kind person. It was difficult for a concubine to survive under her. Moreover, Gu Jinyu didn't like Prince Ning. She liked Prince, and Gu Jinyu pulled Imperial concubine Shu's arm and pleaded, "Aunt, I don't want to marry Prince Ning." Imperial concubine Shu waved her hand. "It may not be Prince Ning." Gu Jinyu said, "She only has one son." Imperial concubine Shu said, "Doesn't she also have a nephew?" Gu Jinyu's eyes lit up. "Aunt is talking about Prince En." The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642/826/113797389. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, zhbqg.com. Chapter 200. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. And on the way back to Yongshou Palace, Zhuang Yueshi couldn't help but call out to noble consort Zhuang. Noble consort Zhuang glanced at her. "What's wrong?" Zhuang Yueshi was a noble daughter of the Zhuang family. She was dignified and quiet. Calling her aunt was really inappropriate. Zhuang Yueshi knew it was inappropriate. She handed the flower basket in her hand to the palace maid and caught up with noble consort Zhuang. She whispered, "You was inappropriate. Please punish me." Noble consort Zhuang said sternly, "You've been acting weird since you met County Princess Hui. Tell me, what do you have against her?" "No," Zhuang Yueshi whispered. Noble consort Zhuang knew her niece well. She was the most noble daughter in the capital since she was a child. She was smart and beautiful. She had never met a rival. Gu Jinyu's reputation was not as good as Zhuang Yueshi's in the early years. However, she was first conferred the title of County Princess. Later, she shone in the girls' school and gradually became as famous as Zhuang Yueshi. Gu Jinyu had not surpassed Zhuang Yueshi yet. However, with Zhuang Yueshi's nobility, it was a failure to be on par with her. Noble consort Zhuang continued to walk forward. She said, "You don't like County Princess Hui because of this? I told you that you are the daughter of the Zhuang family. You have to have a high vision and can't be small." Zhuang Yueshi was not because of this. Zhuang Yueshi looked down and said, "You are right." She paused and said, "But why do you suddenly care about County Princess Hui's marriage? Do you want to be a matchmaker for her?" Noble consort Zhuang smiled faintly. "I want to, but she has to agree first." Zhuang Yueshi was just testing her aunt. She didn't expect to get such an answer. "Aunt, who do you want to marry her to? Eldest cousin? Or?" Noble consort Zhuang smiled but didn't say anything. Zhuang Yueshi's heart skipped a beat. "Aunt, you want to marry her to my brother and make her my sister-in-law?" There were several sons in the Zhuang family, but only Prince and noble consort Zhuang neither admitted nor denied it. Zhuang Yueshi panicked. "Aunt, she is not good enough for brother. She's not a true daughter of a marquis, she's just a peasant girl from the countryside. Even if His Majesty bestows her the title of County Princess, it's just a good reputation. She doesn't even have a living allowance, so what kind of County Princess is she?" Noble consort Zhuang stopped, and the palace maids also stopped. Noble consort Zhuang stroked a four-season osmanthus in the basket. "County Princess is indeed not worthy, but what if she becomes a princess?" Zhuang Yueshi was stunned. On the other side, Marquis Gu was once again summoned by Minister Zhao to the main hall where he handled official business. Marquis Gu had been scolded badly recently, and he knew that he would not be able to avoid another round of scolding. However, to Marquis Gu's surprise, Minister Zhao's expression was exceptionally gentle. He didn't look like he was going to scold him at all. "Marquis Gu, eh?" When Minister Zhao saw Marquis Gu, he smiled brightly for the first time in months. "Assistant Minister Gu, how was your day?" Marquis Gu was confused by his superior's expression and tone. Did he eat well? Did he wear warm clothes? Was it inconvenient for him to go out? Did his child have any difficulties in her studies? He didn't understand what was going on at all. Minister Zhao personally took Marquis Gu's wrist and invited him to sit down on a chair. Marquis Gu looked at the hand that was holding him and wanted to tell him that men shouldn't touch each other. Minister Zhao smiled and said, "You really have such a promising daughter. Why didn't you say so earlier?" Marquis Gu was completely outside of the situation. Minister Zhao's smile disappeared and he sighed. "You hid it from me for a long time. Why did you hide such an important matter?" What did I hide from you?" Marquis Gu was confused. Minister Zhao said, "Just now, people from the Ministry of War came and asked me if the bellows were invented by your daughter." Marquis Gu pointed at himself. "My daughter?" Minister Zhao frowned. "You still don't know?" Marquis Gu shook his head like a rattledrum. Minister Zhao said, "Then let me ask you, do you have a daughter?" Marquis Gu nodded. "Yes." Minister Zhao continued, "Last summer, were you and your daughter in Yozhou's Qingchuan town?" Marquis Gu nodded again. "Yes." Minister Zhao continued, "Is your daughter exceptionally smart?" Marquis Gu nodded heavily. "Yes." His Jinyu had to be smart. She had to be smart. If it weren't for the fact that women couldn't participate in the imperial examinations, his Jinyu could at least pass the Grand Scholar exam. Minister Zhao clapped the back of his right hand against his left palm. "Isn't that settled? Last year, other than your daughter, was there any other daughter from the Marquis's household with the surname Gu?" When Marquis Gu heard this, he understood what was going on. It turned out that the imperial court had found clues about that little girl. But he hadn't heard Jinyu mention it. Marquis Gu wasn't so eager for quick success to claim credit for himself. He decided to first return to the residence to ask Gu Jinyu about the situation. The speed at which this matter fermented was far faster than Gu Jinyu had imagined. She had only been focused on reading books and didn't pay attention to what was going on outside. She had no idea what the invention of wind blowing meant to the Zhao country. His Majesty looked calm, but in reality, he was laughing like a fool. That group of bastards from the Liang country had only used a bit of inferior drainage technology to trade for their Zhao country's mines. Although the two countries hadn't been at war, this was even more unbearable than losing a battle. This was great, they could hold their heads up high. The 6 ministries had also been swept by this technology. Not only could it be used to make iron, it could also improve the quality of metallurgy. What did the Zhao country have? Gold mines. But then again, the Zhao country's productivity was the lowest among the 6 countries. Thus, even if it had many mines, it was still a poor country. The common people seemed to have a good life. That was because the 2 emperors still had a conscience and didn't wantonly exploit the common people. They even reduced taxes. The national treasury was actually very poor. Otherwise, how could they have sold the Imperial College's degree to Lin Qingye? Half of the building that the Lin family had donated to the Imperial College had been taken by His Majesty into the national treasury. However, even though Gu Jinyu didn't know the movements of the Imperial Court and the 6 ministries, she had personally experienced the changes in the people around her. When she had returned from the palace, her personal maid had informed her that an official from the women's school had come and asked her how she was recovering and when she would return to class. Gu Jinyu had been resting at home for so long. The female official had not come earlier or later, but at this time. Who could say that she hadn't been instructed by the crown princess? Could it be that the crown princess had also heard about the bellows? It wasn't strange. Both Consort Shu and noble Consort Zhuang had heard about it, so how could the crown princess not have? After that, the daughters who were on good terms with her but had distanced themselves from her because of her past came back. They came to the Fu to visit her, chatting and laughing as if the previous unhappiness had never happened. Why was this? Their fathers, who were officials in the imperial court, must have sent them to her to find out the truth. If she really was the inventor of the bellows, then no matter how lowly her birth was, no one could look down on her. She had done a good deed that benefited the country and the people. Even His Majesty would praise her. But what if the true inventor ran out one day? Gu Jinyu was in a dilemma. When Marquis Gu returned to the Marquis Fu, Gu Jinyu was tidying up her large chest. This chest was filled with small things that she had written, drawn, and made. Yao She had not thrown them away and had kept them for her. She moved back to her own courtyard and took out all the manuscripts. She wanted to see if she had ever had the inspiration for the bellows. Jinyu, what are you doing? Marquis Gu entered the room and looked at the manuscripts on the floor. He asked in confusion. Gu Jinyu raised her slightly disheveled face and said, "I'm looking for something." "What are you looking for?" Marquis Gu walked in. "Father will help you look." "A sketch." Gu Jinyu said, "A sketch that looks similar to the bellows." "You're talking about this?" Marquis Gu bent down and picked up a piece of paper that had been sandwiched between the pages of a book. On the paper, there was a very immature drawing of a crooked chest. There was something that he didn't know if it was a handle or a lever. There were 2 or 3 layers below. At first glance, it looked somewhat similar to a bellows. Gu Jinyu didn't know what she had drawn. But it definitely wasn't a bellows. But, if it was a little forced, it did look like a bellows. "Jinyu, did you really invent the bellows?" Marquis Gu asked. Gu Jinyu was not in a rush to answer Marquis Gu's question. Instead, she said, "Father, what did the people from the 6 ministries say? What clues did they find?" Marquis Gu said, "They said it was a girl with the surname Gu. She is related to Marquis Ding and Fu. She should be the Marquis Fu's daughter." "Ah, that's right. She's 14 or 15 years old." That's right, the Ministry of War had been to the front lines. Among the clues that they had gathered, there was a very useful piece of age. She was basically going up against Gu Jinyu. Gu Jinyu had a bold guess in her heart, but she did not dare say it. She went to Yao She's courtyard. Yao She was currently making clothes for Gu Zhao. "Mother." Gu Jinyu walked over. The excitement in her heart made her ignore the clothes in Yao She's hands. She crouched down and grabbed Yao She's hand, asking, "Has elder sister come recently? What is it? Are you looking for her for something?" Yao She asked. Gu Jinyu shook her head. "No, I haven't gone to the girls' school for a few days. I haven't seen elder sister, so I wanted to ask how she is doing." The girls' school was next to the medical center. When Gu Jinyu went to school, she would occasionally run into Gu Jiao, but the two basically did not interact. In the medical center, other than the Zhuang sisters, no one knew that she was sisters with a medical center's medicine boy. When her daughter was mentioned, Yao She's brow was filled with affection. "Your elder sister is doing well. It's just that your brother-in-law just finished taking the spring examinations. She's been a little busy." Gu Jinyu did not care. What kind of good reputation could a poor country boy get? Unlike Royal Prince N, who would definitely get first place. When Royal Prince N got first place, he would give her the hairpin. "Is your health better? I heard that you went into the palace today," Yao She said. "I'm fine. I should have come to pay respects to mother first, but Chi Mama urged me, so I could only go see aunt first." "Mother, don't be angry at me." "I won't," Yao She said. "That's right. Mother, you didn't throw away my previous manuscripts, right?" Gu Jinyu took out a few pieces of paper that she had drawn on when she was young from her pouch. "They're the same as these?" Yao She asked. "Didn't you take them all?" Gu Jinyu said, "I'm talking about the ones in the mountain villa." Yao She explained, "These were brought over from the mountain villa." Gu Jinyu lowered her eyes. "Then, has elder sister seen these things?" Yao She shook her head. "I haven't shown them to her." Gu Jinyu looked up at Yao She. "Then did she look through them herself?" Yao She asked strangely, "Why would she look through your things?" She was not a child. Children would not do this. When Gu Yen was young, he never looked through Gu Jinyu's things. Gu Jinyu smiled. "That's not what I meant. She's my elder sister. Elder sister is cold on the outside but warm on the inside. I know that she actually cares about me." Yao She said, "Even if she cares about you, she wouldn't look through your things." Jiao Jiao was a polite and good child. Gu Jinyu did not argue with her mother and changed the topic to talk about other things. Soon, Yao She began to feel sleepy. Yao She had been feeling sleepy recently. Gu Jinyu told her mother to rest well. After walking out of the yard, Gu Jinyu suddenly muttered, "No matter who it is, they must have gotten the inspiration after secretly looking at my drawings." The servant girl, "Young miss, what are you saying?" Gu Jinyu ignored her. She firmly believed in her own conclusion and was no longer worried that she would be exposed. That's right, she was the country's genius girl. Others had simply stolen her inspiration. She was the true owner. The next day, Gu Jinyu went to school. As expected, those young ladies who had been estranged from her all rushed over to curry favor with her. "Miss Gu, I heard that you were the one who invented the quartz bellows. Is that true?" "That's right, that's right." "Is it true? Quick, say something." At the entrance of the girls' school, Gu Jinyu was blocked by the young ladies. Although everyone's tone was inquiring, their eyes were very certain. Otherwise, Gu Jinyu had pretended to be sick at home for so long. Suddenly coming to school, wasn't it because she had made a comeback? Gu Jinyu smiled modestly and said, "His Majesty has not announced it to the public yet. Everyone, don't spread the news. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642/8264286/1137666407. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, M. ZHHBQG. Come. Chapter 201. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel will be updated even faster. Millions of novels will be read for free. All the novels that can't be found online are available here. This was tantamount to admitting it. Everyone looked at her with even more admiration. Gu Jinyu walked into the girls' school surrounded by everyone. Before entering, she glanced at the clinic, trying to find Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao didn't come to the clinic today. She went to the courier station to send a letter to Xue Ningxiang. There was a letter from her, a letter from Zhou Erzwang, who Gu Chongqing brought over from the military camp. There were also some trinkets from the capital for Go Hua. Go Hua was 2 years old now. She could walk, run, and jump. She was especially good at calling people, especially her father. Gu Jiao asked Xue Ningxiang if she had any plans to find a father for Go Hua in the letter. Gu Jiao didn't have those rigid thoughts. In Gu Jiao's opinion, Xue Ningxiang was still young. She was only 2 years older than her, 17 this year. Gu Jiao didn't think that a woman had to find a man to be complete, but she didn't have to be a widow for the sake of reputation. She had the right to pursue her own happiness. From her good handwriting, it could be seen that Xue Ningxiang wasn't a widow who was numb to life and resigned to her fate. She had been by the old madam's side for so long. The old madam didn't like her for nothing. She had her own pursuits. However, she was afraid. She was afraid that this kind of pursuit would be rebellious. She was afraid that it would lead to everyone's disdain and ridicule. When Gu Jiao came out of the courier station, she bumped into someone. They weren't close, but they had seen each other before. The other party was dressed in a maroon brocade robe. He was unrestrained and flamboyant. His features were handsome, and his eyes were devilish. However, Gu Jiao didn't like his devilish charm. Gu Jiao pretended not to see him and walked forward expressionlessly. The moment they brushed past each other, the man suddenly stretched out his arm and blocked Gu Jiao's path. "Miss, long time no see." The fourth prince smiled. "What a coincidence. Are you here to send a letter too?" Gu Jiao looked at the arm in front of her and felt a little annoyed. In all fairness, the fourth prince was not bad looking. If she had not seen that beautiful monk, perhaps he could be considered to be in Gu Jiao's sense of beauty. But if there was a comparison, there would be harm, right? They were both devilishly charming little beauties, but the beautiful monk had thrown him a dozen streets away. Gu Jiao was annoyed. The fourth prince's gaze was unmistakable. Oh, the little lady's temper is quite fierce. But it doesn't matter, His Highness disdains taming a weak horse. The weather is dry, do you have time for a cup of tea? Gu Jiao glanced at him indifferently. Not thirsty. The fourth prince persevered. The desserts in the Jade House are not bad. Miss, do you want to try them? Gu Jiao said, not hungry. The fourth prince said, then let's go watch a play. Gu Jiao was annoyed to a certain extent, but she suddenly calmed down. She looked at him from head to toe. Do you have a lot of money on you? The fourth prince was startled. What kind of words was this? He was a dignified prince. Did he need to give money to watch a play? But he also brought money. He smiled and said, I brought a lot. What does Miss like? This prince will buy for Mississippi. Gu Jiao seriously thought about it. Then let's go to a place where there is no one. Do it cleanly. Don't let her husband find out. The fourth prince did not expect the little girl to be so tactful. He was stunned for a moment, but then he thought it was normal. He was a prince. Who would have the courage to go against him? I know a place where there will be no outsiders. The fourth prince smiled proudly and turned around to open the curtain of the carriage. Are you sure? Gu Jiao asked. Her husband was a scholar and might become an official in the future. Openly robbing someone was not suitable for a future tribute soldier wife. So Gu Jiao decided to give him one last chance. If he really wanted to court death, then she could only help him. The fourth prince was a bit puzzled. Wasn't she asking the wrong question? He should be the one asking her, right? I'm sure, Mississippi. Please. He gestured. Just as Gu Jiao was about to get on the carriage, another carriage came. The carriage stopped next to the two people. The curtain was opened and a handsome figure walked down. Your Highness, long time no see. It was the exact same opening, but it was said carelessly. When he heard it, he felt that there was an ulterior motive. The fourth prince narrowed his eyes and looked at the youth in front of him. He said, Royal Prince-en? Royal Prince-en smiled warmly and his eyes fell on Gu Jiao. He said, Isn't this Miss Gu? Miss Gu doesn't need to go to the clinic today? You know each other? The fourth prince asked suspiciously. Royal Prince-en smiled slightly. When my younger sister and I were traveling, we stayed at the Marquis Ding and Manor for a few days. This is the eldest young miss of the Marquis Ding and Manor. The fourth prince did not know much about the Marquis Ding and Manor. He had only seen Gu Jinyu. Royal Prince-en continued, I just came out of the palace. I heard that the emperor was looking for your highnesses. I don't know if something happened. Since he said this, how could the fourth prince still be in the mood to flirt with a beauty? The fourth prince looked deeply at Royal Prince-en and Gu Jiao before sitting in the carriage and leaving. Royal Prince-en turned to look at Gu Jiao. His temperament was warm and his voice was low. That is the current fourth prince. Gu Jiao knew. Royal Prince-en saw that she was not surprised and paused. He smiled to himself. That's true. She was not a flower that grew up in a greenhouse. How could she be so easily tricked into a carriage by a man? Are you going back to the clinic? He asked. Gu Jiao nodded. Royal Prince-en was about to say that he would send her off when there was a sound above his head. It was a tile that had fallen from the roof. Gu Jiao was on his side. Opposite was the carriage and to the side was the corner. It could be said that there was no way to avoid it. Royal Prince-en stepped forward and used his tall body to protect her, blocking the tile for her. However, the pain he imagined did not come. He blinked and raised his head to look. The tile had already been nailed to the roof of the carriage by Gu Jiao's needle. Royal Prince-en took a step back and helplessly smiled. Miss Gu, have you always been this powerful? You make it so that I can't even save the beauty. Directorate. Xiao Lulang was released from school. When he went out, he saw Gu Jiao carrying a small basket and waiting for him under a large tree. She also carried 2 small bags of medicine in her hands, one on each side. Although the weather had cleared up, it was still not warm. Especially after the sun set, the wind on the streets became even colder. Xiao Lulang leaned on his walking stick and hurriedly walked over. Why didn't you wear more clothes? It wasn't cold when I went out, she said. That meant that it was cold now. Xiao Lulang keenly caught the message in her words. He took off his cloak and was about to hand it to Gu Jiao. However, Gu Jiao looked at the medicine bags in her hands. The meaning behind her words was obvious. Both of her hands were full. People around them looked at them. The light in Xiao Liulong's eyes flickered slightly, but he still draped the cloak over her body. His jade-like slender fingers gently tied the ribbon. Lulang, your wife came to pick you up again? A supervisor, who was on good terms with Feng Lin and thus knew Xiao Lulang, joked as he passed by. Xiao Lulang vaguely replied. Gu Jiao looked at him with bright eyes. Written all over her face was, I'm your wife? Is that so? Is that so? Is that so? Xiao Lulang coughed softly and looked away. Let's go home. Gu Jiao. Oh. Gu Jiao followed behind him and slowly walked out. Suddenly, a pile of snow fell from a big tree. Xiao Lulang pulled her over with one hand and raised his other arm above her head. The snow fell down and drenched his sleeve. She didn't move in his arms and looked at him with wide eyes. She was so obedient. This appearance was too deceptive. Even Xiao Lulang, who was with her all the time, couldn't resist. His chest was suddenly filled with blood. Too obedient. He couldn't stand it. Xiao Liulong's breathing became irregular and he quickly turned his face away. Gu Jiao pressed her little head against his chest and said, "Your heart is beating so fast." Xiao Lulang suddenly took a step back. "No." Gu Jiao looked at his red little ears. "You clearly have." Xiao Lulang said seriously, "If I say no, then no." After saying that, he ran away, but he was too nervous and took the wrong path. With a bang, he hit a tree. Gu Jiao, ha ha. After the spring exams, the atmosphere in the house was much more relaxed. The old madam went out to play cards and didn't forget to bring her husband along. If she lost, it would be her husband's. If she won, it would be hers. Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshun went to the Lu family's house every day after school to learn. They also ate dinner there. To be honest, the master's wife's cooking wasn't very good. She was comparable to Xiao Lulang, but the master said it was delicious, so they could only bite the bullet and eat. Ever since little Jing Kong made his first good friend in the Imperial College, he would play with his good friend every day after school. Today was no exception. Compared to studying, Gu Jiao thought that little Jing Kong lacked communication with his peers. Therefore, she supported his after-school activities. But today, there was one more person in their small group, Qin Chuyu. Little Jing Kong was confused. "Why is he here?" Su Tangtang whispered, "Sigh, my father must have asked me to take him with me. I'm also worried." Su Tangtang and Qin Chuyu didn't know each other. Qin Chuyu and little Jing Kong were in the same class. He was in the ordinary class. His father introduced him, so he had to listen. Little Jing Kong didn't like Qin Chuyu. First of all, Qin Chuyu was spoiled and unreasonable. Second of all, as long as he was with Qin Chuyu, those people wouldn't listen to him. Little Jing Kong didn't understand what kind of emotion this was, so he instinctively wasn't used to it. Su Tangtang didn't like Qin Chuyu, but he could sense that his friend didn't like Qin Chuyu. He felt that he had done something wrong, so he whispered, "I'm sorry, I won't take him with me next time." "It's okay, for your sake, I can play with him." Little Jing Kong was a generous child. As long as he didn't steal his Jiao Jiao, everything else was negotiable. "What are you playing?" Qin Chuyu asked. Su Tangtang said, "We're building a house." Qin Chuyu said arrogantly, "What's so good about building such a small house? If you want to build a house, build a palace." "What's a palace?" Little Jing Kong was a good kid who asked questions whenever he didn't know anything. "The palace is where my father, the emperor lives." Qin Chuyu almost spilled the beans. He was so guilty that he broke out in a sweat. Fortunately, the two kids didn't realize it. Little Jing Kong asked again, "What's an emperor?" He grew up in a temple and didn't know about this kind of information. Now that he was at home, his family never mentioned anything about an emperor. Su Tangtang was born in an official's family, so he knew about this. He explained to his friend, "It's the master of the Zhao state, the most powerful person in the world." Oh. Little Jing Kong didn't really understand and didn't really want to understand. He was only interested in their small house. "I've never seen a palace, so I don't know how to build one." Su Tangtang shrugged. "I've never seen one either." They hadn't even seen a palace before. What a bunch of country bumpkins. Qin Chuyu remembered his father's teachings. He couldn't expose his identity as a prince. However, he secretly made a mental note to ask the crown prince consort's sister-in-law during the next holiday so that he could bring his two little friends into the imperial palace to play. The next day, His Majesty personally summoned Marquis Gu to verify the bellows. Concubine Shu was also present. The smile on Concubine Shu's face never disappeared. His Majesty was still quite cautious. He asked, "I heard that Assistant Minister Gu has a daughter." Concubine Shu had mentioned Gu Jinyu's background to His Majesty. Before that, His Majesty had already promised Concubine Shu to bestow her the title of County Princess. He didn't go back on his word just because she wasn't born in the Marquis' family. It didn't matter if she was just a county princess without a fief or a manor. However, The bellows matter was very important. Marquis Gu cupped his hands and said, "Your Majesty, my eldest daughter grew up in the countryside and didn't study much." The meaning of his words was obvious. How could an illiterate person come up with such an amazing invention? Marquis Gu didn't look like he was lying. Moreover, His Majesty didn't think he had to lie. Who would give the credit of their biological daughter to their adopted daughter? His Majesty drafted an imperial edict to bestow Gu Jinyu the title of secondary second-rank Infanta Hui. She was the first Infanta who wasn't born in the imperial family. Generally speaking, only the legitimate daughter of a prince had the right to be bestowed the title of Infanta. The daughter of the prince's family was a second-rank Infanta. The daughter of the crown prince's family was a first-rank Infanta. Gu Jinyu was the first Infanta who wasn't born in the imperial family. Her rank was slightly lower than that of the imperial family's Infanta, but it was only half a rank lower. She also had a fief of 500 households. Although this fief didn't cost much silver, its significance was too great. From today onwards, she was truly recognized by the imperial family. With her status, it couldn't be said that she wasn't good enough for a prince. Of course, His Majesty didn't forget the carpenter who made the bellows and the old blacksmith who was the first to promote the use of the bellows. He decided to call the two of them to the capital to bestow rewards. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/113764244. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, zhbqg.com. Chapter 202. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. The imperial edict had been issued half a month ago. The old blacksmith and the carpenter were already on their way. They should reach the capital in a few days. Gu Jinyu did not know that the old blacksmith and the carpenter were coming to the capital. After she was conferred the title of princess, she first went to Cunning Palace to visit Empress Xiao and received the gold seal and treasured book. Then, she went to Consort Shu's Chongchun Palace to sit for a while. All the concubines sent congratulatory gifts. Even noble consort Zhuang and the crown princess sent gifts. These two were the most powerful women in the harem other than Empress Dowager Zhuang and the Empress. Their attitudes largely represented the direction of the harem. It was rare that the winds were in the same direction. Aunt did not misjudge you. Consort Shu held Gu Jinyu's hand proudly, her eyes full of praise. The emperor was not the only one who could hold his head high. Gu Jinyu was also proud. Whether it was Yao Shi's favoritism towards Gu Jiao or the cold treatment Gu Jinyu received at the girls' school, at this moment, all the haze seemed to have been swept away. Gu Jinyu returned to the Marquis's residence proudly. She could not avoid being praised by Marquis Gu and old Madame Gu again. Ever since concubine Ling's incident, old Madame Gu had been on the verge of depression. Hearing that Gu Jinyu was so promising and had made the Marquis's residence proud, her face glowed again. She held Gu Jinyu's hand affectionately. "Your grandfather is not in the residence. If he was, he would definitely praise you." Grandfather. That was an extremely lofty word in Gu Jinyu's heart. She did not even dare to say it. Would grandfather really be proud of her? In her impression, grandfather was an unreachable existence. Everyone in the family was very afraid of him. He never seemed to be satisfied with any child. Even though eldest brother worked so hard, grandfather still looked at him with a picky gaze. If grandfather really praised her, Gu Jinyu felt that she could brag about it for the rest of her life. Gu Jinyu left old Madame Gu's courtyard and planned to go to Yao She's courtyard. She wanted to tell Yao She that she had made a great contribution and had been conferred the title of princess. She wanted her mother to know that she was the smartest daughter in the family and was most worthy of Yao She's attention and love. On the way, she unexpectedly bumped into Gu Chongqing. Her eyebrows curved as she walked up to Gu Chongqing and bowed. "Big brother." Gu Chongqing nodded slightly. Gu Jinyu looked at the bundle in his hand and asked with a smile, "Eldest brother, did you come back from outside? What did you take?" "A little prey," Gu Chongqing said. Today, he hunted 2 birds in the military camp. He planned to send them to Bai Shui Alley for Gu Yan and little Jing Kong to play with. Gu Jinyu could hear his indifference. In the past, she would have left tactfully, but today she was exceptionally confident. She smiled and said, "I've never hunted in my life. Big brother, is it convenient for you to bring me along next time? Women can't enter the military as they please." Gu Chongqing tactfully declined. Gu Jinyu was slightly disappointed, but not too disappointed. She took out a jade pendant from her pouch and raised her small face with a gentle smile. "For big brother." "What is this?" Gu Chongqing asked. Gu Jinyu smiled wholeheartedly and said, "It's a warm jade from His Majesty." Giving the jade pendant was secondary. It was more important to remind Big Brother that she had become an imperial daughter. When Gu Chongqing saw the jade pendant, he finally remembered the news he had heard in the military camp. Gu Jinyu had made great contributions and had been conferred the title of secondary second-rank imperial daughter Hui. "Congratulations," Gu Chongqing said calmly. He did not take the jade pendant. "Since it's a gift from His Majesty, then keep it well. Don't lose it." All right." Gu Jinyu sincerely hoped that Gu Chongqing would accept this jade pendant. Gu Chongqing returned to the courtyard. There were not many ripples in Gu Chongqing's heart. He had not counted on relying on Gu Jinyu to bring the Marquis Fu to greater heights. Thus, whether Gu Jinyu became an imperial daughter or not had little to do with him. After Gu Jinyu had finished showing off in front of Big Brother, she was impatient to let others know. Unfortunately, Yao She was not in the Fu. Yao She had gone to Jade Water Alley. She had finished making the clothes for Gu Jiao and brought them for Gu Jiao to try on. The result was great. The sleeves and trousers were shorter again. Had this child only just begun to grow? Yao She did not know whether to laugh or cry. She pulled down the sleeves and trousers that had been gathered. After changing the clothes, she took out the family's clothes to see if there was anything that needed mending. She had hired an embroiderer to make the clothes for the rest of the family. Every month, there would be new clothes. The matriarch and Xiao Liulong's clothes were durable. Mainly, these 2 were not easy to move. The others' clothes were a bit too horrible to look at. In the past, it was Gu Jiao who mended them. Today, when Yao She saw it, she nearly choked from laughing. She had thought that her daughter was omnipotent, but it turned out that she was also a simpleton. Gu Jiao had just finished watering the vegetable garden. When she came to the inner courtyard, she saw Yao She holding a pair of clothes and trembling with laughter. "What's wrong?" she asked in confusion. Yao She's tears came out of her eyes from laughing. After a long time, she stopped laughing and asked Gu Jiao, "Jiao, who did you learn your needlework from?" Gu Jiao thought for a moment, self-taught. Yao She knew. Otherwise, who would know how to sew? Yao She was about to die from her daughter's teasing. She patted the stool to the side and indicated for Gu Jiao to sit. Then, she held the place that Gu Jiao had mended and said, "You don't need to tie a knot with each stitch, and you don't need to leave the thread outside. Like this." Yao She took it apart and sewed it again for Gu Jiao to see. "Oh." Gu Jiao thought seriously, "I thought that I was very good at sewing." After all, sewing clothes had improved her surgical skills. She could sew faster than before. As the mother and daughter chatted, Gu Yan and Gu Shaoshun returned from the academy. Today, they did not need to go to Master Lu's place to learn. The two did not know that Gu Jiao and Yao Shi were both at home, so they bickered and each entered the courtyard with a chicken feather on their head. Gu Xiaoshun had a small gang in the countryside. At that time, he was the #1 bully in the surrounding villages. The chicken feather on his head was the symbol of his chicken feather gang. After that, he was sent to Qianxiong Academy by Gu Jiao. On the surface, he seemed to have changed, but in reality, he was still a gang of celestial monkeys. Today, he was finally caught red-handed by Gu Jiao. Older sister. Gu Xiaoshun plucked the chicken feather on her head. Her eyes moved, and she also plucked the chicken feather on Gu Yan's head. The two stood there motionlessly, waiting for Gu Jiao's decision. Jiao Jiao. Auntie Zhang, who was in the alley, came to the door. The wall behind my kitchen is about to collapse. I'll go take a look for you. Gu Jiao looked at the two celestial monkeys in the house, put down the water bucket used to water the flowers, and went to her house with Auntie Zhang. The first time the neighbors found out that Gu Jiao was capable was when the roof of the old chancellor next door leaked. Gu Jiao climbed up and directly renovated the roof. After that, the neighbors all knew that Grandmother Zhuang's grandniece-in-law was capable. Auntie Zhang's courtyard wall cracked and needed to be repaired with mud. In ancient times, there was no cement. It was all lime mortar and rammed earth. Lime mortar was not stable enough, and it was easy to get damp in rainy days. Rammed earth was a better choice. The raw materials of rammed earth were red mud, coarse sand, and lime blocks. There were still lime blocks and coarse sand in Auntie Zhang's house. Little Jing Kong used up the red mud. Recently, he was obsessed with building houses with his friends, so he really didn't know where to get more. Auntie Zhang was very anxious. Can't it be repaired today? I don't think it'll last until tomorrow. The courtyard wall was connected to the kitchen. Once it collapsed, the people who were cooking in the kitchen would be in danger. Gu Jiao thought for a while and said to her, "Wait a minute." Gu Jiao went back to her house and went to the kitchen to find glutinous rice. She cooked a pot of glutinous rice soup, and then poured the thick glutinous rice into the evenly mixed lime mortar. "Older sister, what are you doing?" Gu Xiaoshun asked curiously. Gu Yan also squatted down and looked at her eagerly. "Why did you pour the rice soup into it?" Gu Jiao gave each of them a stick and gestured for them to keep stirring. "This is glutinous rice mortar. It's better than rammed earth. It's more suitable for pasting walls." The process of ramming earth was actually very difficult. It needed to mix the three raw materials together, and then use a tool to pound it over and over again. The more times it was hammered, the stronger the rammed earth would be. Glutinous rice mortar was not so complicated, but its firmness was much higher. This was because the cooked glutinous rice soup contained amylopectin, which was the perfect natural adhesive. It was an exaggeration to say that the strength of the lime paste adhered by it was almost comparable to the concrete in his previous life. "Be careful, don't get it on your bodies," Gu Jiao said. "Okay." The two of them nodded. When Gu Jinyu arrived at Jade Water Alley, she saw the three siblings mixing the mortar together. Gu Jinyu's brows furrowed. In her impression, Gu Yan had always been a sickly person who would pant when walking. She did not expect him to know how to work, much less do this kind of rough work. Yao Shi sat to the side, leisurely mending clothes. She did not feel that there was anything wrong with Gu Yan's work. Gu Jinyu composed herself and walked into the courtyard. "Mother, older sister, younger brother, what are you doing?" Gu Yan glanced at her and ignored her. Gu Yan hated her. He hated her when he did not know her background, and hated her even more now that he knew. Gu Jiao also ignored her and continued to make her glutinous rice mortar. She did not speak to Gu Xiaoshun, so Gu Xiaoshun naturally would not ignore her. Yao Shi turned to look at her. "Oh, it's Jinyu. Why are you here?" Gu Jinyu gently said, "I did not see Mother in the manor, so I guess that Mother must have come here. I brought some things for older sister and younger brother." Gu Yan rolled his eyes. "Who cares?" The mortar was quickly finished. Gu Jiao found a bucket and filled it with a large bucket. "I'll do it." Gu Xiaoshun carried the bucket to Aunt Zhang's house. Gu Yen also wanted to carry it, but he could not lift it. Thus, he carried a small shovel. The three siblings went to mend the walls of Aunt Zhang's house. Yao She sighed. Gu Jinyu looked at the dirty mortar on the floor and the unfinished glutinous rice soup. She frowned in disdain and turned to look at Yao She. Mother, how can older sister let younger brother do rough work? Younger brother's body is so weak. It's precisely because he's weak that he has to do more work. Don't you see that your younger brother is much more energetic than before? If Gu Yen had not taken medicine every day, Yao She would have thought that her son was already a normal person. Gu Jinyu pursed her lips, but the imperial physicians all said that younger brother cannot work too hard. He needs to rest more. Yao She said, your older sister is a doctor. She knows what's best for Yen. Gu Jinyu gaped. She was just a medicine boy. How could she be a doctor? Gu Jinyu's gaze landed on the glutinous rice soup and mortar. This was nonsense. The glutinous rice soup was food, but Gu Jiao had used it to mend the mud. Otherwise, why would she say that she grew up in the countryside? She did not have any common sense. Gu Jinyu could not see it, but he endured and did not say, Mother. What is it? Yao She asked. Gu Jinyu smiled and took out a golden seal and a book from his sleeve. He handed them to Yao She. Yao She was slightly startled. This is... Open it and take a look, Gu Jinyu said proudly. Yao She opened the box with the golden seal and flipped it over. It was the imperial daughter's seal. Gu Jinyu waited for Yao She's praise. Yao She had heard about the bellows. Yao She did not understand the court's rules, but becoming an imperial daughter was an honor. Yao She nodded in satisfaction. Mother, Jinyu is really amazing. Receiving Yao She's approval, Gu Jinyu was very happy. Not long after, the three siblings returned. The three were covered in dirt from pasting the wall. Their hair was covered in dust. Aunt Zhang carried a jar of pickled vegetables and walked in. She said to Yao She, Yao, your children are really capable. They finished it in one go. The joy and pride in Yao She's eyes almost overflowed. She was even happier than when she saw Gu Jinyu's imperial daughter seal. Yes, they are all very capable. What was so good about pasting a wall? Gu Jinyu frowned. Gu Jinyu had brought many things bestowed by the emperor to show everyone the good news of her becoming an imperial daughter. However, other than Yao She's slight praise at the beginning, Gu Jiao's group treated Gu Jinyu and her valuables like air. Gu Jinyu did not feel the joy of showing off at all. The gold, silver, and jewels she had brought could not compare to a jar of worthless pickled vegetables. As expected, they came from the countryside and did not know what was good for them. At night, Gu Jinyu returned to the Marquis Fu. A servant girl told her that in the 4 hours she had been gone, many young ladies had come to visit and left gifts. They were all to congratulate her for being conferred the imperial daughter title. Gu Jinyu felt a little better. When Marquis Gu returned to the Fu, Gu Jinyu told him about her visit to Jade Water Alley. When she mentioned that Gu Jiao had pasted up a neighbor's wall, she especially praised her. Actually, older sister is also very capable. If Marquis Gu had been present at the time, he probably would have also felt that the three siblings were very capable. But when Gu Jinyu, who had invented the bellows, singled them out, there was a stark contrast. Marquis Gu snorted, "What's so good about pasting up a wall? She can only do this. Day after day, when I told her to go study, she wouldn't. She had to do these things that could not be shown in public. Can't she learn from you? Study well, play well, and be the eldest miss of the Marquis Fu." Gu Jinyu warmly said, "Older sister's happiness is most important." Marquis Gu snorted coldly, "She is happy. She had stolen his son." It was said that one was marked by the company one kept. He was really worried that Yen would become a country bumpkin if he spent all his time with that girl. Gu Yen, who was worried about becoming a country bumpkin, was now playing checkers with the #1 prodigy of Zhao country, little Jing Kong. He had successfully lost the 18th round tonight. With a black face, He went to the study of the #1 prodigy of Zhao country to find his brother-in-law to play 5 in a row for consolation. In the end, he was defeated consecutively for 5 rounds. The heartbroken baby Yen went to old Madam's house to play cards with old Madam and her 2 mahjong buddies for a while. Old Chancellor also checked on his homework and completed his perfect, defeated, and pretentious, bitter day. The response to the first batch of golden sore medicine for the military camp was good. The military camp quickly placed a second batch of orders. Gu Jiao was busy earning money every day. Gu Jinyu was not idle either. The invention of the bellows had greatly stimulated her. She was exceptionally smart since she was young. She did not believe that she could not think of something that others could think of. Moreover, the bellows was just that. It was exquisite, but the principle was very simple. Wasn't it just increasing the wind to make the fire burn brighter? What was so difficult about that? Gu Jinyu had an idea. She took out a pen and paper and improved the ratio of the furnace to the bellows. She doubled the number of bellows. This would increase the firepower and the effect of smelting iron would be higher. Gu Jinyu took the blueprint and entered the palace. She told Consort Shu her idea. Originally, it could be completed in a month. After the improvement, it can be completed in half a month. Oh my God, it's so fast? Consort Shu was shocked. Yes. Gu Jinyu nodded with certainty. This is like the water drains that the imperial court used in the past. Because the wind was not strong enough, the effect was not high enough. Consort Shu did not know much about this, but she heard that it was better than the current furnace. Naturally, it was a great contribution. Consort Shu led Gu Jinyu to the royal study to meet His Majesty. The borders had not been peaceful recently. His Majesty was discussing important matters with the military officials. If an ordinary person came, the eunuchs would not rashly announce it. But who asked this Princess Hui to be His Majesty's favorite? Eunuch Wei smiled and said, "Your Highness, please wait a moment. Princess Hui, please wait a moment. This old servant will go and announce it." Old servant? In the past, Eunuch Wei had called himself a miscellaneous person in front of Gu Jinyu. "Thank you for your trouble, Eunuch Wei," Consort Shu said. Gu Jinyu also nodded. Eunuch Wei took small steps into the room and whispered a few words to His Majesty. His Majesty was almost annoyed to death by the problems at the borders. Coincidentally, he also needed some exciting news. So he dismissed the military officials and called Gu Jinyu and Consort Shu in. And Gu Jinyu did not disappoint him. His Majesty was actually a layman, but he trusted Gu Jinyu. He immediately sent someone to send the blueprint to the Ministry of Works. The Ministry of Works Manufacturing Department looked at Gu Jinyu's blueprint with a suspicious expression. "There are so many bellows. Will there be no problem?" His colleague at the side said, "It's Miss Gu's blueprint. What problem can there be? His Majesty personally sent someone to deliver it. Hurry!" Since it was His Majesty's order, there was no way around it. The manufacturing department immediately ordered his subordinates to improve the ratio of the furnace and bellows according to Gu Jinyu's blueprint. The results proved that the efficiency had indeed increased. They could produce almost 2 days' worth of goods in 1 day. His Majesty was very pleased. He rewarded Gu Jinyu, Marquis Gu, and the Ministry of Works. Gu Jinyu was in the limelight in the capital. Everyone praised her as the second wondrous woman after the Crown Prince Consort, and even faintly showed signs of standing shoulder to shoulder with the Crown Prince Consort. In the Eastern Palace, a junior palace maid spoke up for the Crown Princess. "Your Highness, is a wild girl from the countryside worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as you?" Gu Jinyu's background could not be hidden from the Eastern Palace. Now that she was a princess, there was even less need to hide it from the world. Not only did the commoners not discriminate against her, they valued her even more because of this. They thought that she was a commoner's princess. Not only did she not put on airs, but she also demonstrated to the world that even a pheasant could become a phoenix. The crown princess knelt on the cushion and calmly practiced her calligraphy. It was as if no matter how many storms she experienced, she remained as indifferent as a chrysanthemum. Being in the limelight for a moment is nothing. She has to be in the limelight for a lifetime to be considered capable. She did not express any dissatisfaction with Gu Jinyu's limelight at all. The crown princess had seen too many people in the limelight who disappeared in the blink of an eye like shooting stars. His Majesty's favorites came and went, but how many of them lasted? She would never be jealous of a woman who stole her limelight because she knew that it was all temporary. On a sunny afternoon, the old blacksmith and the carpenter finally arrived in the capital after a long journey of more than a month. They were escorted by officials all the way, so it was not too difficult. It was just that the old blacksmith was old and could not bear it. Because they were summoned by His Majesty, the officials did not dare to delay. After entering the capital, they took the two to the post house to bathe and change before immediately entering the palace to meet His Majesty. The two had not even been to the capital, much less the palace. Walking on the shiny white marble floor, the two did not even dare to breathe loudly. Lowly craftsmen like them had never dreamed that they would be able to meet His Majesty. They would really bring honor to their ancestors. The old blacksmith was nervous and excited. His old legs trembled as he walked. To be able to meet His Majesty, it is worth it even if I die here. The one who received them was Eunuch Wei, who served His Majesty. Eunuch Wei smiled and said, "You cannot say this word in the throne room. It is taboo." The old blacksmith hurriedly covered his mouth. Of course, he did not forget to glance at Eunuch Wei. He was clearly a man, so why did he speak so strangely? The carpenter was a young man in his early 30s. Young people adapted quickly, but he was so excited that he could not take care of himself. After taking 2 steps, he stumbled and almost fell. The junior eunuchs at the side covered their mouths and snickered. Eunuch Wei's eyes swept over them, and the junior eunuchs' expressions all became solemn. Eunuch Wei led them to the side hall. He respectfully reported outside the door, "Your Majesty, the craftsmen from the county town have arrived. Come in." His Majesty was in a good mood. The two had changed their clothes at the post house. The officials had also taught them the etiquette of kowtowing on the way here. As for whether they could learn it or not, that was another matter. The two had not yet seen His Majesty, but they felt their legs go weak just by hearing his majestic voice. "Please." Eunuch Wei smiled and reminded them. The two trembled as they stepped over the threshold. The palace was grand and untainted. The two did not feel like they had come to the imperial palace, but rather a fairy palace. "Kneel." Eunuch Wei saluted. The two fell to their knees with a plop. They had completely forgotten the etiquette they had learned earlier. The two brought out the strength they used to kowtow to their ancestors and kowtowed 3 times to His Majesty. After they were done, the two wanted to light incense, but unfortunately, they did not have any. His Majesty was very magnanimous and respectful to his own people. He would not put on the sacred and majestic air in front of the courtiers. "You may rise," he said. The two, "Why is there this?" The officials did not say anything. The two of them looked at each other and suddenly lay flat on the ground. "His Majesty, Eunuch Wei," His Majesty almost laughed out loud. "Quickly help them up." "Yes." Eunuch Wei also struggled to hold back his laughter and personally helped the old blacksmith and the carpenter up. They were 2 honest people. Otherwise, they would not have taught the blowing technique to the imperial court and the local craftsmen without hiding anything. This was also the reason why His Majesty decided to reward them. However, to His Majesty's surprise, they actually refused His Majesty's reward. The old blacksmith said sincerely, "It was not us who did it. It was that girl. If your Majesty wants to reward that girl. We have received enough benefits. My iron shop is famous, and our Cheng shop also has endless business. We have never earned so much money in our lives. Now that we can see His Majesty again, we can die without regrets." When they returned to the county town, they would be people who had seen His Majesty. They could brag about it for 18 generations. The word death had always been a taboo in front of His Majesty. However, when it came from a commoner's mouth with such sincerity, His Majesty only felt happy. Once he was happy, he would reward them even more. His Majesty smiled and said, "If you have any other requests, just say it." The two had discussed it on the way here. The old blacksmith said, "We want to see that girl and thank her in person. That young lady was a noble person in their lives, so they had to thank her no matter what." His Majesty was in a good mood today and approved their request. Gu Jinyu was brought into the palace. Eunuch Wei wanted to give her a surprise, so he did not say who had come. He only knew that they were two old friends from the county town. Gu Jinyu wondered if she had any old friends in the county town. Could it be two servant girls from the manor? Was Yuru back? In the end, she saw two unfamiliar men. The two unfamiliar men were also looking at her. Gu Jinyu had an ominous premonition. She frowned, gathered her thoughts, and bowed. "Your Majesty." His Majesty raised his hand to indicate for her to rise. He looked at the carpenter and the old blacksmith. "Do you still remember them?" Gu Jinyu was stunned. These two people. Did she know them? The old blacksmith and the carpenter had the same doubts. That's right, did they know this girl? His Majesty teased the two. "What's wrong? It's only been half a year, and you don't recognize your little benefactor? You even said that you wanted to thank her in person." Gu Jinyu's heart skipped a beat. The old blacksmith frowned. "Your Majesty, you're mistaken. She's not that girl." Digression: the monthly votes have been a little low recently. Starry eyes. How about monthly votes? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that you can't find online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/113736348. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, zhbqg.com. Chapter 203. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that cannot be found online are all available here. No one in the throne room dared to speak like this in front of His Majesty. Eunuch Wei's expression changed. Gu Jinyu's expression also changed slightly. However, it was not because of the other party's inappropriate choice of words. She forced herself to remain calm. His Majesty looked at Gu Jinyu strangely and said to the old blacksmith and carpenter, "She is Miss Gu." The carpenter had never seen Gu Jinyu before and could not comment. But the old blacksmith remembered clearly and waved his hand. "She is not. Miss Gu does not look like this." Eunuch Wei smiled and said, "Could it be that you have mistaken her? Take a look again." The old blacksmith had been working his whole life and did not know much about the ways of the world. He was not tactful, and when his temper flared up, he even forgot that he was talking to His Majesty. "No need to look. Miss Gu stayed in my shop for an entire afternoon. How could I not remember what she looks like? Also, her voice is not like this." No, you are mistaken." Eunuch Wei smiled awkwardly. "Are you sure that the lady's surname is Gu and she is the daughter of the Marquis?" Yes. The old blacksmith hurriedly nodded. When Xiao Sanzi went to the blacksmith shop to help Gu Jiao get the farm tools, the old blacksmith insisted on giving Miss Gu a bonus. Xiao Sanzi was pestered until he could not bear it and accidentally said, "Miss Gu is the daughter of the Marquis, why would she lack your money?" Xiao Sanzi had let it slip, but after that, he was especially cautious and did not speak of it again. Eunuch Wei said, "But she is the daughter of the Marquis and her surname is Gu. There is no other daughter of the Marquis with the surname Gu in this world." As he spoke to this point, he suddenly paused. No, there was a second. Marquis Gu's family had 2 daughters. One was his biological daughter who grew up in the countryside, and the other was his adopted daughter who grew up by his side. Although they were swapped, Marquis Gu had always treated his adopted daughter as his own, and this adopted daughter was very capable. If the swapping incident had not been exposed, no one would have suspected that she was not the real daughter of an aristocratic family. What Eunuch Wei guessed, His Majesty guessed it too. However, Marquis Gu once swore that his own daughter was illiterate. So who was the one lying? The old blacksmith's expression was magnanimous, but Gu Jinyu's face was deathly pale. His Majesty's stern gaze landed on Gu Jinyu's face. What do you have to say? Gu Jinyu clenched her fists to prevent herself from showing her cowardice. Your Majesty, I was the one who invented the bellows. The old blacksmith was anxious. Aya, you little doll, how could you lie? You didn't even go to my shop. If you don't believe me, call them all over. The old blacksmith was not the only one at the blacksmith shop that day. The other blacksmiths had also seen Gu Jiao. How dare you? This is the princess. Eunuch Wei reminded him in a low voice. The old blacksmith didn't care if she was a princess or not. He only knew that she wasn't the person he was looking for. She couldn't claim credit for herself. Your Majesty. Gu Jinyu bowed and said, It's true that this official's daughter has never been to a blacksmith shop, but this official's daughter did design the bellows. His Majesty frowned and said, Then what did you say at the beginning? Gu Jinyu lowered her eyes and said in a low voice, Your Majesty only asked this official's daughter if the bellows were my invention. He didn't ask if this official's daughter had ever been to a blacksmith shop. His Majesty's frown deepened. Then aren't you curious how someone else managed to make your own thing? Gu Jinyu said, I was curious, but I wasn't too surprised. After all, this official's daughter had mentioned it to many people. Even my personal maid knew about it. His Majesty's gaze was already suspicious. Are you implying that someone stole your results? No, it's not like that. The old blacksmith refuted. Miss Gu wouldn't steal. Gu Jinyu shook her head and said earnestly, I didn't say that she stole. Perhaps she had good intentions and wanted to help you, so I don't blame that person. Ah. The old blacksmith was stunned. He was smart, generous, and selfless. He had all of them. But the old blacksmith still felt that something was wrong. It had nothing to do with evidence. It was just his intuition, which he had lived for most of his life. Gu Jinyu had already made up her mind. She insisted that the inspiration was her own. If His Majesty wanted to investigate, he could only investigate the people around her. She had already bribed the maids, and they would provide her with favorable statements. More importantly, her father would definitely side with her. As for that girl, what evidence could she produce? Blueprints? Ha! Who didn't have them? She had already grasped the principles behind the bellows. If she really confronted her, it would be as if no one could win against that girl. But Gu Jinyu had never expected that just when she thought that she had victory in her grasp, the Ministry of Works suddenly sent bad news. The furnace for smelting iron had exploded. It had been the furnace that Gu Jinyu had modified with the bellows. It had only taken 3 days. To be exact, it hadn't even taken 3 days. This morning, the furnace had exploded. The explosion of that furnace had been so powerful that it had completely destroyed the furnace that the Ministry of Works had just built. This was not the scariest thing. The scariest thing was that there had been many craftsmen from the imperial court present. They had all been seriously injured by the explosion. The person who had come to report was a deputy supervisor from the Ministry of Works. He had rushed over from the scene. He had just gone to the latrine and was not near the furnace. Otherwise, he would have also been seriously injured. Bring him in, His Majesty said in a low voice. In an instant, he no longer had that amiable aura. The old blacksmith and the carpenter both saw what was called the true might of the Emperor. He sat on the wooden chair and exuded an unshakable aura. It was so oppressive that the two could not breathe. The deputy supervisor entered the side hall in a sorry state. His legs gave out and he knelt down. He concisely recounted the incident. When he mentioned that it was Gu Jinyu who had modified the furnace, he glanced at Gu Jinyu with a complicated expression. The blood drained from Gu Jinyu's face. The old blacksmith asked anxiously, "Why did it explode? How big is your furnace? How many bellows did you use?" The deputy supervisor did not know this commoner, but since he could appear in His Majesty's royal study and His Majesty did not stop him, he told him the truth. The old blacksmith lamented. "Ah. Miss Gu said that such a big furnace could only use 2 bellows at most. Who told you to use 6? Aren't you courting death?" When Gu Jiao had taught the technique to the old blacksmith, she had naturally told him what to pay attention to. The old blacksmith had told the imperial court without reservation. "Why did you decide on your own?" The old blacksmith was very anxious. The deputy supervisor felt bitter because it was the princess' idea. She had invented the bellows. If she wanted to modify it, who would question her? His Majesty's gaze on Gu Jinyu suddenly turned cold. Gu Jinyu broke out in a cold sweat. She braced herself and said, "My design will not have any problems. There must be some other problem." The deputy manufacturing supervisor said, "No, we are strictly following the princess's blueprint." Moreover, the operation of the bellows was very simple. As long as it was connected correctly, there would not be any mistakes. At this time, no one wanted to be the scapegoat. His Majesty turned to look at the old blacksmith and the carpenter. "Sir, please go and take a look at the scene." The old blacksmith and the carpenter followed the deputy supervisor to the Ministry of Works. Gu Jinyu also went. The scene was a big fire. Thick smoke rose everywhere. It was a mess. The injured blacksmith was carried out by the guards with wooden planks. The bloody scene was too horrible to look at. Gu Jinyu only felt her stomach churning. She covered her chest and turned around to retch. Gu Jiao was resting today. The 4 men at home had all gone to school. The old lady had also brought the old chancellor out to play cards. She was alone at home. She had planned to take a break for half a day, but before she could rest for a while, Xiao Sanzi came. "Miss Gu. Miss Gu." "Not good. Something big happened." Gu Jiao said lightly, "Is Gu Chenglin not eating again, or Gu Chengfeng defaulting on the medical fees again?" "Neither." Xiao Sanzi said in horror, "The furnace in the Ministry of Works exploded." In Zhao country, there was no public hospital like in Gu Jiao's previous life. The imperial court had limited doctors. The largest was the imperial medical department, but there were not many people. The second largest was the medical officers in the military camp. They were far away from the fire. Generally, when such an emergency occurred, the imperial court would requisition doctors from the major medical centers in the capital. The miracle hall was also in the requisition scope. Gu Jiao took the medicine box and went to the scene with Dr. Song and 2 other doctors. The scene was more chaotic than Gu Jiao imagined. Amidst the thick smoke, there were injured people being carried out by the guards from the collapsed smelting room. Doctors from other medical centers had already arrived and were treating the injuries of several injured people. Gu Jiao was not in a hurry to treat the injuries. Instead, she took out the cloth strips of various colors that she had prepared in advance and handed them to the 3 doctors of the Miracle Hall. "Do as I said before." "Yes." The 3 nodded. Minister Zhao was originally outside inspecting the city's defense. When he heard that something had happened in the government office, he rushed back without stopping. Beside him stood a young man with an honorable aura. The young man was wearing a brocade robe. He was tall and had a cold face. Between his eyebrows, there was an aura of a superior. At this time, almost all of the injured people were carried out. There were dozens of people with light and serious injuries. The doctors from the major medical centers were treating the injured people. But among this group of people, there were a few doctors who acted differently. They were not in a hurry to save the patients. Instead, they quickly examined the patients. According to the severity of their injuries, they pasted different colored cloth strips. The patients with the red cloth strips were in critical condition. The patients with the yellow cloth strips were not lightly injured, but they were still conscious. The patients with the green cloth strips were slightly injured. They first treated the patients with the red cloth strips, then the patients with the yellow cloth strips, and finally the patients with the green cloth strips. Compared to the chaos in the other medical centers, their side was orderly and orderly. The young man slightly narrowed his eyes. Soon, he found a patient with a black cloth strip. He was lying quietly on the floor. The doctors came and went, but no one cared about his condition. "Is he dead?" the young man asked. Minister Zhao hurriedly ran over and used his hand to check the patient's breathing. He came back and reported, "He seems to still be breathing. But why aren't they treating him?" Minister Zhao expressed his confusion. The old blacksmith and the carpenter also joined in the rescue. Although the two did not know medicine, they could help get the person out of the ruins. In the thick smoke, there was a small figure that could not be ignored. She was wearing a blue robe and had a slender figure. Her sleeves were rolled up, revealing her white wrists. Her side profile was as perfect as jade, but there was a red birthmark on the left side of her face. Her white hand dripped through the blood. She was calm and composed. There was no panic or disdain in her eyes. The young man stared at her. "Who is that?" Minister Zhao said. "Your Highness, that seems to be the female doctor of the Miracle Hall." The young man murmured, "Miracle Hall." The rescue efforts at the scene were in full swing, but Gu Jinyu was completely panicking. She really did not expect that the furnace she had modified would have such a big accident. There were dozens of injured people, and people were still being dug out of the ruins. At this moment, she really felt afraid. She did not dare to think about how His Majesty would hold her accountable. She seemed to be standing in front of a dangerous wall that could collapse at any moment. Her entire body began to tremble. In her panic, she noticed the injured person who was covered in black cloth. As if she had seen a life-saving straw, she quickly ran toward the injured person. She did not care about the ashes and blood on the ground, nor did she care about the injured person's mangled flesh. She knelt down next to the injured person. "Someone come. Is there a doctor coming to save him?" She cried out in despair, even shouting out the hesitation in her heart. Her elegant and clean dress was stained with blood. She took out a clean white silk handkerchief and held it in her hand. She lowered her head and carefully wiped the injured person. "Doctor! Doctor!" she cried out in a choked voice. She was a good person, not someone who disregarded human life. She had a conscience and a compassionate heart. She gritted her teeth and roared, "I am a royal princess. I order you to save him." This was the treatment area of the Miracle Hall. The doctors of the Miracle Hall were engrossed in treating the patients at hand. No one paid her any attention. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that you can't find online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/8964289642826/113707520. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 204. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. Don't move. It'll be done soon. Gu Zhao was cleaning a patient's wound. He was the first craftsman to notice that something was wrong with the furnace and hurriedly ordered people to run out. If it weren't for him, all the craftsmen who were blowing air would have been killed by the explosion. However, even though they escaped quickly and the furnace exploded quickly, many of them were seriously injured. Especially after this furnace exploded, the other furnaces also collapsed and the fire burned down the entire workshop. The loss of the imperial court was huge. "Doctor, will my leg be crippled?" the craftsman said fearfully as he lost feeling in his leg. Gu Jiao stitched up his wound. "No, I just gave you an anesthetic and you're temporarily unconscious. You'll feel pain after the anesthetic wears off." The craftsman was relieved and looked gratefully at Gu Jiao. He said weakly, "Miss, I'm fine, you can go treat the others." "Okay." Gu Jiao nodded. She finished the last stitch and bandaged his wound. Then, she walked to the next patient. Another patient's back was badly burned. Dr. Song was using the saline Gu Jiao gave him to clean the wound, but the wound was too big. It was Dr. Song's first time dealing with a patient of this level and he was a little shaky. "I'll do it," Gu Jiao said to him. "You go and see the patient over there." "Okay." Dr. Song gave up his seat for Gu Jiao and went to see the other two patients with yellow strips of cloth. This patient had a red strip of cloth. His condition was critical, but he could still be saved. Gu Jiao squatted down and took a pair of scissors to cut off the rest of the clothes on his back. He hadn't completely lost consciousness, which meant that he was in great pain. Gu Jiao took out a painkiller from the small medicine box and was about to inject it into his skin when Gu Jinyu rushed over like a madman. He grabbed Gu Jiao's wrist and said hoarsely, "I've been shouting for so long, didn't you hear me? Someone over there is dying. Go and save him." In the past, in Gu Jinyu's heart, Gu Jiao was just a little medicine boy. But when it came to a critical moment, she actually started to rely on this little medicine boy. Gu Jiao looked at the hand holding her wrist in annoyance. "Take it away." It was too annoying to say another word. Gu Jinyu said self-righteously, "Aren't you a doctor? How can you leave him in the lurch?" She pointed at the patient lying beside Gu Jiao. "That person's condition is much worse than his. If we don't treat him now, he will die." Of course, Gu Jiao understood the man's condition. She was the one who tied the black cloth on him. He was a dying man, so there was no value in saving him. Saving him would only lead to the deaths of a large number of critically ill patients covered in red cloth. Seeing that Gu Jiao was ignoring him, Gu Jinyu exploded. "Are you going to watch him die? Do you still have a conscience?" Gu Jiao pried open Gu Jinyu's wrist and pricked the patient's arm with a needle. She freed her other hand and gave Gu Jinyu a slap. This was not the small slap she had suffered when she was fighting with Zhuang Meng Dai in the small town. Gu Jinyu was slapped to the ground. Her right ear was ringing. The corner of her mouth was also cut. Her forehead hit a broken piece of wood and blood immediately flowed out. Gu Jinyu looked at Gu Jiao in disbelief. Gu Jiao had already given the patient an analgesic injection. She took out a piece of antiseptic dressing and covered the patient's wound. Her movements were very careful. After doing all this, she stood up and looked coldly at Gu Jinyu. "Now that you know he is dying, why didn't you do it earlier? You don't even know how much wind and air volume a furnace can withstand. Who gave you the guts to operate the bellows?" The blood drained from Gu Jinyu's face. Gu Jiao said coldly, "If you are ignorant, then find a place to die of stupidity. Don't come out to harm others." Gu Jiao had already seen the old blacksmith and knew the whole story of the accident. This was originally an accident that could have been completely avoided. The young man had seen everything that had happened between Gu Jiao and Gu Jinyu. "Find out who that girl is." Minister Zhao was about to respond when a hidden guard appeared out of nowhere and nodded. "Yes." Minister Zhao broke out in cold sweat. As expected of His Highness. Even his hidden guards were so elusive. The fire was spreading and it was not advisable to stay at the scene for long. Minister Zhao also joined the ranks of the injured. Soon, Gu Chongqing arrived with a group of guards. The 6 ministries and the Grand Council belonged to different factions. Strictly speaking, the accident at the Ministry of Works had nothing to do with the military camp. But when he heard that the doctor at the Miracle Hall had been requisitioned by the Ministry of Works, he led his personal guards and rushed over. "Eldest brother." When Gu Jinyu saw him, it was as if she had seen another life-saving straw. She ran towards Gu Chongqing with a face full of tears. Gu Chongqing did not see her at all and rode his horse past her. He stopped not far from Gu Jiao and dismounted. He walked nervously towards Gu Jiao. "Are you okay?" Gu Jiao was changing the dressing for the patient. His injuries were too serious and a piece of dressing was soaked in blood. Gu Chongqing was a man, but he was secretly uncomfortable seeing this scene. He reached out his hand. "Give it to me." Gu Jiao shook her head and said to him, "There are still a few patients over there. Help move them. Send them to the medical hall?" Gu Chongqing asked. "Yes." Gu Jiao nodded. Gu Chongqing quickly ordered his subordinates to find wooden planks to carry the patients out. There was another patient who had only sprained his ankle and suffered some superficial injuries. Gu Chongqing directly carried him on his back. He had only taken a few steps when he suddenly felt two gazes that could not be ignored fall on him. He looked over and saw a carriage parked outside the back door. That seemed to be. While he was thinking, there was a rumbling sound from the other end of the ruins. Gu Chongqing's eyebrows twitched. At this moment, the old blacksmith shouted, "Oh no! The furnace is going to explode again." The fire was not controlled and burned the furnace in the other boiler room, causing the furnace there to explode as well. Gu Jinyu's face turned pale and she ran away. How could she still remember the critically ill patients? It was more important to save her own life. Gu Jiao picked up the patient in front of her and quickly left the scene. Unfortunately, she was still a step too late. The moment she took a step, the furnace exploded with a bang. The moment the fire dragon swept over, Gu Chongqing tiptoed and flew behind her. He used his body as a shield to block the attack of the fire for her. Gu Chongqing's whole body was burning. Gu Jiao turned to look at him. "Get lost." Everyone was shocked. The military officer saved you, and you still want him to get lost? Gu Jiao said, "Get lost." Gu Chongqing fell to the ground and rolled up. The fire on his body was quickly extinguished. Everyone who heaved a sigh of relief was stunned. Shi Yi was stunned. "So when you said get lost, it was really just the literal meaning of get lost." Gu Chongqing extinguished the fire quickly and did not suffer serious burns. However, Gu Jiao still brought him back to the medical hall with the other patients. There were many medical halls that came to treat this time, including the second boss's old nest, Huichun Hall. Huichun Hall was one of the best medical halls in the capital. They had 6 doctors this time, but the number of patients they treated was not even half of the number of patients in Miracle Hands Hall. What was even more shocking was that the patients all proposed to go to Miracle Hands Hall for further treatment. "Shopkeeper don't you think that young lady looks a bit familiar?" an elderly doctor said. Shopkeeper looked at Gu Jiao's back. He did not see the other party's appearance clearly, but he was very familiar with this situation. Wasn't this the little medicine boy that accompanied the second boss at the hot spring villa? Why was she here? The doctor said, "I heard that after the second boss left the Hu family, he opened a new medical hall in the capital. It seems to be called Miracle Hands Hall. Could it be the Miracle Hands Hall from before?" Shopkeeper said, "That's impossible, right? This Miracle Hands Hall's doctor is even better than our doctor." Where did he find such a good doctor? Shopkeeper felt that it was not possible. However, this Miracle Hands Hall had indeed stolen their Huichun Hall's business. When he returned, he had to report to his boss and let him pay attention to Miracle Hands Hall. The patients at the scene only received simple treatment. When they returned to the medical hall, those who needed surgery would need surgery and those who needed treatment would need treatment. Gu Jiao was very busy and did not have the time to find trouble with Gu Jinyu for the time being. After Gu Jinyu fled the scene, she panicked and boarded the carriage, falling down. "Miss." The servant girl was frightened by her miserable state. Gu Jinyu's face was pale as she said, Quickly go find father." Marquis Gu was not in the Ministry of Works today. He had been sent to the western suburbs of the capital last night to survey the irrigation works and would only return 3 days later. He still did not know that the Ministry of Works Yamen was in trouble. Because of Gu Jinyu's great merit, he had also risen in rank and became a popular figure in the Ministry of Works. Everyone had the right to kill, no, to curry favor with him. He was happily surrounded by a group of colleagues who flattered him. Suddenly, a guard came over to report, "The imperial daughter is here." Marquis Gu personally went outside to welcome his daughter. "My good daughter, why are you here today? Did you specially come to see father?" "Ah." He was shocked by Gu Jinyu's swollen face. Those who did not know would think that they had seen a ghost. "Father." After Marquis Gu boarded the carriage, Gu Jinyu told him about what happened at the Ministry of Works Yamen. "I really didn't do it on purpose. I didn't know that something would happen to the bellows. They all said that there was a problem with my design, but why was it fine at the beginning? And then something happened when those two people came." She made it sound as if the old blacksmith and the carpenter had something to do with the bellows accident. Gu Jinyu sobbed as she said, "They also said that I didn't make the bellows. It was elder sister who made it." "How could that girl make the bellows?" Marquis Gu's face was full of disdain. Gu Jinyu said softly, "I don't know if elder sister saw my blueprint." Marquis Gu frowned. He vaguely felt that the girl was not someone who would do such a thing. But other than this, he could not figure out how she could make the bellows. "Did the old blacksmith really say that your sister told him?" "Yes." Gu Jinyu nodded. "That shouldn't be." Marquis Gu pondered. "Why would she peek at your things? She also doesn't know where your things are." Gu Jiao had been to the Marquis's residence and the mountain villa several times, but she had never entered Gu Jinyu's courtyard. Gu Jinyu did not expect her father to believe Gu Jiao at this time. She was stunned and said, "Perhaps elder sister also thought of how to make the bellows." "We all thought of it." Marquis Gu's intelligence was only online for a moment. He sighed. "Perhaps the two of you really have a telepathic connection. Don't worry, I will investigate the bellows accident. It might not be a problem with the bellows. It could be that the furnace has not been repaired for a long time. As for who invented the bellows, I will also report to His Majesty." Gu Jiao hugged his arm and said coquettishly, "Father, you really dote on your daughter the most in the world." Marquis Gu was very pleased. This was what a caring little girl was like. Unlike that lass, who seemed to be leaking air everywhere. She was simply a cold armor. Marquis Gu temporarily put aside his official duties and went to the palace to see His Majesty. His Majesty was listening to Minister Zhao report on the accident, the number of casualties, and the amount of damage at the scene. He was in a very bad mood. When he heard Marquis Gu say that the furnace's explosion might have been caused by the furnace and not the bellows, he wanted to throw Marquis Gu out. Marquis Gu did not know that he had ignited His Majesty's anger. He continued, "Rest assured, Your Majesty. I will definitely find out the truth. Also, about the bellows, my two daughters have actually thought of it." After Marquis Gu left, His Majesty leaned tiredly against the back of the chair and raised his hand to massage his sore brows. The sky was dark and the surroundings were silent. The huge imperial study was dark and boundless, as if a giant beast had opened its dark mouth and swallowed him whole. After a long time he sighed. "Wei Shen." "Your Majesty." Eunuch Wei walked in. "Do you want me to light the lamp?" His Majesty nodded. Eunuch Wei lit an oil lamp. Under the oil lamp, His Majesty's face was haggard and his expression was tired. With such a big matter happening, the one who was most upset was the ruler of a country. He softly said, "Your Majesty, please take care of your body." His Majesty asked, "Tell me, whose credit is the bellows?" Eunuch Wei dryly laughed. "Your Majesty already has the answer in your heart. Why bother asking this servant?" His Majesty said, "The old Marquis had served Zhan for his entire life, but he still had to bear the crime of being disrespectful. Zhan took away his military power and removed his armor." Eunuch Wei brightened the lamp. "That was for the country." His Majesty casually picked up a memorial from the table. "The Marquis of Ding, and wants to give the credit to his adopted daughter. This matter was this matter. The responsibility for the accident had to be investigated, but the credit for the bellows could not be erased. Those who should be punished would be punished and those who should be rewarded would be rewarded." Eunuch Wei dryly laughed. This old servant should not say this. It doesn't matter who made the bellows. In the end, it was the work of the Marquis Fu. I heard that the eldest Miss Gu had already gotten married in the countryside and County Princess Hui had not yet married. This was very thought-provoking. If a married woman only married a country bumpkin, the help she could provide to her maternal family was limited. If Gu Jinyu married into a noble family, His Majesty would be like a tiger that had grown wings. In terms of value, the credit should be given to Gu Jinyu. As for the accident, once the evidence came out, the Marquis Ding and Fu would definitely have to take responsibility. His Majesty hesitated. But wouldn't this be too unfair to the eldest miss? Eunuch Wei earnestly said. Her own father did not feel wronged. Why would your Majesty feel wronged for her? She is destined to be abandoned by the Marquis Fu. She will not be of any help to the Marquis Fu and will not be of any help to your Majesty. His Majesty gave a self-deprecating smile. Then is Zhen still a wise ruler? Eunuch Wei said, Your Majesty sacrificed one person to save the people from disaster. Why is it unclear? Why is it unkind? Your Majesty! A young pill apprentice called from outside the door, You should take the pill. His Majesty gave Eunuch Wei a look. Eunuch Wei understood and walked to the door with his horsetail whisk. He extended his skinny hand and said in a sharp voice, Give it to me. Yes. The young pill apprentice knelt on the ground and handed the brocade box to Eunuch Wei with both hands. Eunuch Wei took the pill and entered. Your Majesty, don't read the memorials for now. Take the pill. The young pill apprentice stretched his neck. He could not see the scene inside and could only vaguely see His Majesty take the pill from the silhouette in the window. He retreated with satisfaction. Once he left, His Majesty coldly snorted and threw the pill that he had not taken back into the box. With a face full of disdain, he said, Get rid of it. Yes. Eunuch Wei received the pill and put it away. Your Majesty. His Majesty's ears did not have a moment of peace before another young eunuch came. Imperial concubine Shu has come to deliver a tonic soup. Venison complete tonic soup. Good. It was another thing to seek favor. The inner palace had more porridge than monks. The monks had not been there for a long time. Which woman could stand it? But His Majesty was also very helpless. Eunuch Wei wanted to laugh but did not dare to. It took him a lot of effort to hold it in. Your Majesty, please bear with it. Didn't that little magic doctor say that you would be free of worries if you did not get sick for 2 years? It has been almost a year. At the mention of the little magic doctor, His Majesty's expression eased a little. He was bored in the palace, so he decided to go out for a walk. He left the palace in plain clothes and only brought Eunuch Wei with him. The master and servant wore the clothes of an ordinary master and a steward and walked openly on the street. There were not many people in the world who had seen the emperor's true appearance, so the two of them were not worried about being recognized. Walking on the streets, looking at the lights of thousands of houses and seeing the people well fed and well dressed, the depression in His Majesty's heart finally dissipated a lot. Oh! As His Majesty was walking, a small ball fell over and rolled to his feet. Eunuch Wei was scared and opened his arms. Protect His Majesty. His Majesty looked at Eunuch Wei speechlessly. It's a child. The small ball pulled the hem of the clothes in front of him and stood up. He patted his little butt and looked down. Oh! My shoe! One of his tiger-head shoes was gone. That was his most beloved little shoesie. He ran around in a circle but could not find his shoe. He was so anxious that he put his hands on his waist and stamped his feet. His Majesty was amused by his charmingly naive look and could not help but laugh. Little Jing Kong finally noticed the adult in front of him. He looked up at him, thought for a while, and said, Handsome uncle, have you seen my shoe? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with inner content that cannot be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896428826/113704327. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, m. zhbqg.com. Chapter 205. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. Handsome Uncle, this form of address was too interesting. This was the first time the emperor had been called this. All the flattering words could not compare to this child calling him handsome uncle. This child did not seem to be afraid of him. Although he traveled incognito, he had been sitting on the dragon throne for many years. He had already developed the aura of a dragon. When normal people saw him, they would feel a sense of fear. He squatted down. Eunuch Wei stopped him. Master. The emperor raised his hand to stop him, indicating for him to shut up. He squatted down in front of little Jing Kong and looked at little Jing Kong at eye level. This child was too beautiful. She had a round little face, big grape-like eyes, small eyebrows, and a small nose and mouth that were unbelievably good-looking. The last time he saw such a cute child was when A Heng was young. Facing this kind of child, no one could put on airs. The emperor could not help but reveal a gentle smile. What is your name? Jing Kong. Little Jing Kong put his hands behind his back and tilted his head to think. He grabbed his lapel and said, I am a student of the Imperial College. The emperor was extremely moved by this child's cuteness. Every little expression and action was extremely cute. The night was too dark, and he paid too much attention. At first glance, he felt that his clothes were a little familiar, but he did not think that he was a student of the Imperial College. After all, the children in the Imperial College were all 6 or 7 years old. This little ball looked to be less than 4 years old. He laughed. Are you really a student of the Imperial College? How could the Imperial College have such a young student? Little Jing Kong confidently said, I am. I really am. If you don't believe me, you can test me. In truth, the emperor did not know what the Imperial College was, so he tested his chubby son on the 1,000-character classic and the 3-character classic. As a result, little Jing Kong crossed his arms and looked at him with a serious expression. Giving such childish questions, are you looking down on me? The emperor. The night wind in February was still very cold. Little Jing Kong lost one of his shoes and stood on the cold ground with his little feet. He was freezing. He put his right foot on top of his left shoe, but this made him unsteady. He swayed from side to side, and his little foot fell to the ground. He quickly lifted his little foot and put it back on top of his left shoe. This repeated over and over. The emperor suddenly felt sorry for his small foot. The emperor bent down and picked up the little fellow. Eunuch Wei was shocked. Your Majesty! What are you doing? You are the ruler of a country, the true dragon, the son of heaven. How can you casually carry a commoner's child? Little Jing Kong suddenly felt that he had become taller. He twiddled his fingers in his handsome uncle's arms. He couldn't let strangers hug him. But a little hug didn't seem to be a big deal. Uncle Handsome didn't look like a bad person. In Zhao country, there was a saying that one would hug a grandson but not a son. Thus, the emperor had never even hugged his own son. Now, he was hugging a commoner's child. It turned out that a child's body was so soft and had a faint milky fragrance. Where do you live? The emperor asked pleasantly. Little Jing Kong pointed at the medical center. He lived in by Shui Alley, but he was going to the medical center now. His friends were all in the medical center. Master! Eunuch Wei looked at the emperor worriedly. The emperor said, It's okay. The public security around the Imperial College was very good. Besides, He also wanted to see if the emperor's foot was really clean and peaceful. "Let me carry him." Eunuch Wei reached out his hand. The emperor could even carry the country. How could he not carry a child? The emperor rejected Eunuch Wei and carried little Jing Kong to the medical center. The emperor didn't know that this was the medical center where the victims of the accident were. Little Jing Kong pointed him to the back door and directly entered Gu Jiao's small courtyard. In the courtyard, Qin Chuyu was eating heartily. He didn't expect that his father would arrive 3 seconds later. He had a stick of candied haws in his left hand and a bottle of milk in his right hand. He was sucking on it, and it was so delicious that it bubbled. "Chuyu!" Little Jing Kong called him. "Yes." He answered without thinking. When he looked up, he almost choked to death. The emperor and Eunuch Wei also saw Qin Chuyu. Qin Chuyu said, "Father, father, father." Eunuch Wei said, 7, 7, 7, 7. The emperor said, "Shut up." The two of them obediently shut up. Little Jing Kong looked at Uncle Handsome and then at Qin Chuyu. He felt that the two of them didn't look right. "Do you know each other?" He tilted his head and asked. It would have been better if he didn't ask. As soon as he opened his mouth, Qin Chuyu was jealous. He had never been carried by his father in his life. How could this kid take advantage of him? Qin Chuyu boldly glanced at the emperor. Seeing that the emperor didn't seem to have any intention of stopping him, he cleared his throat and said, "He's my father." "So he's your father." Little Jing Kong suddenly understood. In the countryside, the emperor had several grandchildren of his age. However, little Jing Kong was the eldest in the family. Moreover, he had seen Su Kongji's father. Su Kongji had a son at an old age. Su Kongji's father was older than Chu Yu's father, so little Jing Kong accepted this matter quite well. Little Jing Kong wiggled his little butt and got down from Uncle Handsome's arms. Qin Chuyu finally saw his feet. It turned out that his father carried him back because he didn't have any shoes. He felt a little better. Little Jing Kong said, "Your father is so good-looking." Qin Chuyu replied politely, "Your brother-in-law is good-looking too." Little Jing Kong, who didn't think his bad brother-in-law was good-looking at all, Little Jing Kong jumped into Jiao Jiao's room and changed into a new pair of tiger head shoes. Gu Jiao Jiao's courtyard was filled with Little Jing Kong's things. From clothes, shoes, to toys, everything was available. As soon as the emperor appeared, Qin Chuyu became extremely nervous. He didn't dare to eat snacks or drink milk. He just stood there like a coward. The two people Qin Chuyu was most afraid of in his life were his uncle, Marquis Xianping, and the emperor. In fact, neither of them had beaten him before. On the contrary, Empress Xiao would occasionally hit his palm with a ruler when she was angry. The emperor was also quite depressed. At this moment, he really believed that the little fellow was a student of the Imperial College and was even his son's classmate. But how could an 8-year-old child play together with a 4-year-old child? Also, the sky was so dark, but he didn't go back to the palace. However, the emperor didn't embarrass his son in front of outsiders. Soon, Su Kongji came back breathlessly. "Jing Kong, where did you go?" Little Jing Kong ran out and shook his head with his hands on his hips. "I told you you couldn't catch up with me. Ha ha ha. Who is he?" Although Su Kongji's father was a court official, he had never seen the emperor. "He's Chuyu's father," Little Jing Kong introduced. "Oh." Su Kongji greeted him politely. "Hello, Uncle Chu." Old man Su only told Su Kongji to play with Chuyu. He didn't say that Chuyu was a prince, so Su Kongji naturally didn't know that Chuyu's surname was Qin. The two children didn't know Qin Chuyu's identity. It seemed that they had made a real friend. The emperor's expression was not so strict. The three children played for a while more. Qin Chuyu's servants came to take him back to the palace. They were all scared to death when they saw the emperor. The emperor didn't say anything and was about to take Qin Chuyu away. Suddenly, a few women's shrill cries came from outside the courtyard. The emperor frowned. "What's going on?" Little Jing Kong sighed. "It's the patients' families. A lot of patients came to the clinic today. They were seriously injured. Their families are very sad. A lot of patience. An ominous premonition flashed through the emperor's heart. He gave Eunuch Wei a look. Eunuch Wei understood and went to the front hall to ask around. He didn't know if he didn't ask, but when he did, he was shocked. This miracle medicine hall treated dozens of government laborers and craftsmen who were involved in the accident at the Ministry of Works. Both the upper and lower floors were full. The emperor sent the 3 children away and let them go inside to eat. After listening to Eunuch Wei's report, the emperor's face suddenly darkened. When Minister Zhao reported the accident to him, he didn't mention that there were so many injured people. Isn't there only a dozen? Most of them aren't seriously injured. He said that only 2 of them were seriously injured, and they have been properly treated. This was why the emperor had come to Zhongnan to visit incognito. In order to protect their official positions, the news they sent to him had all been filtered. The emperor of a country was blinded and would make the wrong decision. Eunuch Wei didn't dare to say anything. When Minister Zhao reported to the emperor, he already guessed that there were more casualties. The emperor probably guessed it too. However, he and the emperor didn't expect Minister Zhao to hide so much. This was too much. "I'll go and see for myself," the emperor said in a low voice. "You can't, Your Majesty." Eunuch Wei hurriedly stopped him. As a eunuch, he was terrified of those injured people. The emperor, as the emperor of a country, couldn't go and see such a scene. The emperor ignored Eunuch Wei's obstruction and strode out of the courtyard. As soon as he crossed the threshold, he unexpectedly met a strong figure. "Military officer Gu?" The emperor was surprised. Gu Chongqing came to see little Jing Kong and Gu Chenglin. Gu Chenglin was moved to Gu Jiao's small courtyard because the ward was too crowded. However, he had been lying in the room and didn't come out. Therefore, even little Jing Kong and the others didn't know he was in the courtyard. Gu Chongqing was also very surprised to see the emperor here. Gu Chongqing saluted with his hands folded. "Your Majesty." The emperor's gaze fell on his bandaged left hand and asked, "You also went to the scene of the accident?" Gu Chongqing said truthfully, "Yes, I heard the news on the way and brought a group of people there." The emperor nodded and assumed that he was here to escort the injured people. The emperor asked again, "Is your hand okay?" Gu Chongqing said, "It's not serious. It's just a superficial wound." The emperor looked at him steadily. "You went to the scene, so you should know the situation at that time. Tell me honestly, how many people died?" Gu Chongqing was a member of the military camp and didn't participate in the affairs of the 6 ministries. Logically speaking, he should avoid this topic. However, when he thought of the injured people and Gu Jiao almost sacrificing her own life to save them, he finally made up his mind and said honestly, 6 people are in critical condition, 13 are seriously injured, 37 are slightly injured, and 1. I don't know if we can save him. If we can't save him, there's only 1 person left." The emperor felt his vision go dark. Although he expected the situation to be more serious than what Minister Zhao said, he didn't expect it to be this serious. The patient that was being saved was the man that Gu Jiao had put a black cloth on. He was judged to be of no value. However, he was still breathing when everyone left the scene. Other medical centers didn't dare to take him, but Gu Jiao did. After the 6 critically ill patients were all out of danger, Gu Jiao began to save him. She had been saving him for 6 hours now. Whether there was a death or not, the nature of the accident was completely different. Everyone waited anxiously, including the emperor and Gu Chongqing. The emperor was worried about that life, and Gu Chongqing was worried about that life and Gu Jiao's health. Gu Chongqing brought a water bag over. The emperor looked at him strangely. After an unknown amount of time, the door finally opened. Gu Jiao walked out. She was soaked with sweat and there wasn't a dry spot on her body. Gu Chongqing strode forward. "How are you?" His willpower is really strong. He saved his life for the time being, but he hasn't completely passed the danger. At this point, Gu Jiao realized that Gu Chongqing was asking about her. She paused. "I'm fine." She was just a little hungry. Gu Chongqing uncorked the water bag in his hand and handed it to her. The food is ready. Go and eat something. Gu Jiao nodded and took a sip from the water bag. The emperor looked at Gu Jiao and was completely dumbfounded. He never expected to see her here. Wasn't this... Oh? Gu Jiao saw the emperor, but she didn't recognize him. Seeing the emperor's stunned expression, she asked, "Are you the patient's family?" The emperor was so stunned that he forgot to answer. Gu Chongqing knew that the emperor was traveling incognito, but he didn't know how to explain. Gu Jiao continued, "His condition is still unstable. He has to pass the critical period for 3 days." The emperor finally found his voice. Yes, he was wearing a bamboo hat at the time, so the little girl didn't recognize him. The emperor said, "I'm not his family." Oh. Gu Jiao thought for a moment and said, "Are you from the yamen to investigate the accident?" Without waiting for the emperor to speak, Gu Jiao nodded her head. "If you have any questions, you can ask me directly. You can also ask Dr. Song, Dr. Chen, and Dr. Li. We were all people who went to the scene." She didn't say that the investigation was useless, or that officials don't make decisions for the people. She also didn't ask if she would get in trouble if she answered truthfully. She looked at him with frank and sincere eyes. The emperor was suddenly speechless. Gu Chongqing whispered, "I'll deal with the investigation. You go eat quickly." Gu Jiao felt that it was feasible and turned around to go to the courtyard. Only when she was far away did the emperor recover from the successive shocks. He remembered the way Gu Chongqing interacted with the other party. It didn't seem like it was the first day they met. He asked, "You know each other?" Gu Chongqing cupped his hands and took a deep breath before saying, "Replying to your majesty, she is this official's little sister." The emperor was shocked again. "Your little sister?" "Your little sister isn't," Gu Chongqing firmly said. "She is my biological little sister." On the carriage back to the palace, Qin Chuyu, who was tired from playing, fell asleep. He laid down next to the emperor. The little fatty's body was curled up like a little bear cub. Eunuch Wei used his hand to stop him from rolling off the bed. The emperor was completely immersed in an indescribable shock. The harvest from this trip was too great. The injured person's condition, the Ministry of Works concealment, and the little godly doctor who treated his venereal disease. And the little godly doctor was actually Marquis Ding An's biological daughter. If that was the case, then the bellows was also her. Marquis Ding An, are you a stupid pig? After the emperor returned to the palace, the first thing he did was to have Minister Zhao roll over to his imperial study and ask him about the true casualties. Minister Zhao wanted to make a final struggle, but unexpectedly, the emperor directly threw the list of injured people in front of him. Seeing the list, Minister Zhao was stunned. Didn't he already issue a gag order? Which brat that wasn't afraid of death had leaked the truth? The people in the Ministry of Works naturally did not have this courage, so the emperor did not have any hopes of starting with the Ministry of Works. He appointed Gu Chongqing. Many of today's patients had been escorted by Gu Chongqing's guards. He knew which medical centers they had been sent to and easily obtained the names of the patients. Among them, the Miracle Hands Hall had taken in the most patients. This included a dying patient and 6 critically ill patients that had been rejected by other medical centers. There were also 7 heavily injured patients and 10 lightly injured patients. Seeing the list, Minister Zhao's face turned white. Although the cause of this accident was Gu Jinyu messing with the bellows, as the head of the Ministry of Works, Minister Zhao was not without responsibility. The Yamen's time for work was at 7 in the morning, but the accident happened at 5 in the morning. In other words, those craftsmen were already working hard before the sun rose. When Minister Zhao reported the news, he delayed it by 2 hours in order to hide the fact that they had started work early. This was not the most frightening thing. The most frightening thing was that many of the injured were illegal workers hired by the government office. They were paid the least and did the most tiring and dangerous work. The court paid them the salary of regular craftsmen, so where did the difference in the salary go? The Ministry of Works had countless workshops of various sizes. This was just the tip of the iceberg. If the other workshops also had this kind of shady business, then it would be a terrifying amount. The emperor's chest was filled with anger. My eyes are blind, my ears are deaf. If there was such a despicable thing under the emperor's feet, then what about the entire country of Zhao? The national treasury was in deficit because they had raised these vermin. Minister Zhao desperately kowtowed. Your Majesty, this subject did not know of this matter. This subject was negligent. Your Majesty, please give this subject a chance to forgive you. This subject will investigate this matter thoroughly and find the person behind the chaos. It would be strange if the emperor believed him. He had the imperial guards drag him away. The emperor trembled with anger. Eunuch Wei offered a cup of tea. Your Majesty, please calm down. The emperor fumed. Such a big thing has happened and everyone treats me like I'm deaf. Like I'm blind. How do you want me to calm down? Eunuch Wei sighed. Minister Zhao was actually useful. He had been the Minister of Works for 2 consecutive terms. His merits outweighed his faults. If not for the furnace and bellows incident, he would probably have been promoted next year. But he had run into that Miss Gu. Was it Minister Zhao who was unlucky, or was it all the people related to Gu Jinyu who were unlucky? Eunuch Wei helplessly shook his head. Thinking of something, he asked, Your Majesty, about Princess Hui. Yes, there was still this problem. The emperor's head hurt. He pinched his sore brows. Summon her into the palace tomorrow. Early the next morning, Eunuch Wei went to the Marquis Fu and summoned Gu Jinyu into the palace. Gu Jinyu had learned her lesson and was more careful today. On the way to the imperial study, she secretly stuffed a heavy pouch into Eunuch Wei's hands. She warmly said, Eunuch Wei, why did your Majesty summon me today? Eunuch Wei smiled and put the pouch into his pocket. Gu Jinyu saw him accept it and was delighted. But she heard him say, Princess will know when you go in. I don't dare to ask your Majesty's intentions. Gu Jinyu. After Gu Jinyu entered the imperial study, she respectfully bowed. This official's daughter greets your Majesty. The emperor did not tell her to get up. He read through the memorials in his hand and left her hanging for a quarter of an hour until her legs were numb. Only then did he say, neither too fast nor too slow, the results of the investigation of the accident have come out. It was caused by excessive bellows. You personally modified it. Do you have anything to say about this? Gu Jinyu had not slept the entire night. She had already guessed this possibility and had thought of what to say. She knelt down and kowtowed. She sincerely said, This official's daughter is guilty. When this official's daughter was calculating the maximum amount of wind the furnace could withstand, she miscalculated a number. These were the words that Gu Jiao had used against her. She used what she had learned. Thank you so much, elder sister. The emperor was very obsessed with arithmetic and astronomy. When he heard her mention this, he almost indicated for her to continue speaking. Fortunately, he remembered his purpose. Then what about the bellows? Did you really invent the bellows? If not, do you know what crime you committed? If you tell me honestly, I can forgive you this time for the sake of the old marquis. Otherwise, if we really find evidence, Gu Jinyu, you know the consequences. The crime of deceiving the emperor was punishable by flogging or death. Gu Jinyu's heart was flustered. Didn't His Majesty trust her yesterday? Why did he suddenly suspect her? It was His Majesty who summoned Gu Jiao, and then what did Gu Jiao say about her in front of His Majesty? What an abominable girl! Although Gu Jinyu was very tempted by the emperor's suggestion, she still retained her last shred of clarity. This was His Majesty's trap. His Majesty could not find any evidence. If he could, he would have already punished her. Why would he force her to confess? As long as she refused to admit it, the invention was hers. Even though her mistake had led to a tragic accident, with the invention of the bellows, according to the laws of the Zhao country, her merits and demerits were offset. At worst, she would be fined a large sum of money, but she herself would not have to accept any punishment. She kowtowed and said, Your Majesty, what I said is true. The bellows was invented by me. The emperor's fingers turned white from holding the memorial. Eunuch Wei looked at Gu Jinyu and then at the emperor. He shook his head and sighed. Gu Jiao did not have the first draft. She had drawn it on the ground and it had been copied by a carpenter. Gu Jinyu was confident that she dared to insist that the bellows were hers. The emperor sighed and said, "All right, we believe you. You may rise." "Thank you, your majesty." Gu Jinyu slowly stood up. The emperor said, "You have reached the age to talk about marriage. The empress and noble consort Zhuang have found several outstanding men for you. Come and take a look." Gu Jinyu was startled at first, then she was overjoyed. She walked forward and said, "Yes." She came to the emperor's desk and reached for the portrait that the emperor had given her with his eyes. She swore that she did not touch anything, but the imperial jade seal on the table suddenly fell. It turned out that the imperial jade seal was pressing down on the portrait. On top of the imperial jade seal was another portrait. Gu Jinyu had taken the portrait that was being pressed down by the imperial jade seal. The imperial jade seal fell to the floor and broke a corner with a bang. Gu Jinyu's face turned pale. The emperor was very calm. He looked at the broken imperial jade seal on the ground and said faintly, "Oh, princess, this is the imperial jade seal. You broke it." "Your majesty." "No. I didn't. I didn't break it." Gu Jinyu panicked. The emperor snorted coldly. "If it wasn't you, was it we? We didn't even raise our hand. Everyone in the room saw it." Gu Jinyu looked at the emperor in disbelief. "Your majesty." The emperor calmly took a sip of tea. "Deliberately breaking the imperial jade seal is a capital offense. Whether you did it on purpose or not, we will order people to investigate. Go to the prison and reflect. Guards, take the imperial daughter to the Ministry of Justice's prison." Gu Jinyu screamed, "Your majesty, your majesty, your majesty." Gu Jinyu was awkwardly carried out by the imperial guards. Eunuch Wei looked sympathetically at Gu Jinyu. Fighting with the emperor? Too inexperienced. The emperor's depression lessened. He had people put away the imperial jade seal that had been broken by Qin Chuyu. He said to Eunuch Wei, "In a moment, if Marquis Ding and comes to plead for his daughter, have him go plead for his eldest daughter." Eunuch Wei's mouth twitched. Yes. The emperor's guess was correct. Marquis Gu really did enter the palace to plead with the emperor after hearing the news. Eunuch Wei stopped him outside the imperial study. Of course, he could not directly pass on the emperor's words. That would easily cause hatred between the emperor and the young divine doctor. As the head eunuch who had carved out a bloody path in the inner palace, Eunuch Wei had his own way of speaking. He slightly polished his words and said, "Because of the Ministry of Works Yamen, His Majesty did not sleep a wink and has just rested. Junju has made a great mistake and harmed so many innocent craftsmen. His Majesty is currently in a fit of anger. There is no use for Marquis to see His Majesty. Marquis' eldest daughter has performed meritorious service in treating the injured. If Marquis really wants to plead with her, it would be better to plead with her. If she comes forward, I believe His Majesty will be willing to grant her grace. That girl was just a little medicine boy. How could she treat the injured? She was just basking in the glory of the Miracle Hands Hall. Although he slandered her in his heart, his steps did not stop for a moment. He quickly rushed to the Miracle Hands Hall. It was still quite early. Gu Jiao had just finished changing the medicine for the injured person who had been bound with a black cloth. She then went to the other sick rooms to check on the conditions of the 6 critically ill patients. Everything was fine. She returned to the courtyard. The girls' school had started. The female student called Li Wanwan had begun practicing the guqin in the neighboring forest. Fortunately, it did not torture Gu Jiao's ears. Gu Jiao narrowed her eyes and lay on the rattan chair in the courtyard, listening to Li Wanwan play the guqin. Halfway through, the courtyard door was forcefully slammed. "Open the door." It was Marquis Gu. Li Wanwan was probably frightened, and the sound of the zither stopped abruptly. "Play yours," Gu Jiao said. The owner of the guqin did not ask why. She seemed to trust Gu Jiao very much and continued to play the guqin. Her Guqin was very beautiful and could soothe the restlessness in one's heart. Marquis Gu, who was outside the door, had no time to appreciate the Guqin. It was obvious that the door was bolted from the inside. That girl was in the courtyard, but he had been knocking on the door for a long time and that girl did not respond. That girl was doing it on purpose. Marquis Gu was furious. "I know you're in there. Hurry up and come out. Jinyu has been taken away. Hurry up and save her." Gu Jiao scoffed and put one hand behind her head. What did Gu Jinyu being taken away have to do with her? Marquis Gu was not discouraged. Jinyu didn't do it on purpose. She didn't do it on purpose. She only wanted to improve the bellows for the good of the court. She also didn't expect such a big accident to happen. "You're her elder sister. You can't let her go to jail." "Oh, jail?" Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows. When Marquis Gu heard that Gu Jinyu had been taken away, he lost his mind and forgot to ask what crime Gu Jinyu had been arrested for. He even thought that His Majesty was blaming Gu Jinyu in the name of the accident. Marquis Gu roared, "She's your younger sister. Do you still have a conscience? Hurry up and come with me to the palace to see His Majesty. I beg His Majesty to grant you a favor and pardon your younger sister." Gu Jiao. Ha ha ha. Marquis Gu was furious. You. If you don't come out, I'll seal this medical hall. I'll see how you can continue to be so arrogant. Before he could finish, the courtyard door opened with a creak. A slender white hand reached out, revealing a white wrist that was as delicate as jade. She lifted her wrist and grabbed Marquis Gu's collar. Marquis Gu did not even have time to react before he was dragged into the courtyard. You brat, what are you doing?" Marquis Gu's buttocks rubbed against the ground mercilessly. Gu Jiao's expression was indifferent as she dragged him, as if she was dragging a gunny sack. Without another word, she dragged him into the woodshed. She closed the door of the woodshed. On the other side of the courtyard wall, the sound of a zither was melodious. An indescribable scream rang out from the woodshed. Ah! 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 Bang bang bang! Dong dong dong! Ka ka ka! Don't hit my face! Ah! The sound of the zither was melodious and mellow. When the last note was played, a certain someone in the woodshed had also finished punching his last fist. Gu Jiao opened the door and walked out of the woodshed, feeling refreshed. The sunlight shone in and shone on Marquis Gu's bruised and swollen pig head. He was like a puppet whose strings had been cut, leaning against the wall soullessly and sitting on the ground. Marquis Gu felt wronged. Boo-hoo. I said I don't like to be hit in the face. Digression. Can I ask for a monthly vote? I'm afraid that everyone has too many monthly votes and won't be able to finish voting by the end of the month. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that you can't find online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_826/113675639. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, m. zhbqg.com. Chapter 206. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found on the internet are all available here. After Li Wanwan finished playing, she was a little worried about Gu Jiao. She actually heard some noise, but the girl on the other side of the wall didn't let her stop, so she had to bite the bullet and continue playing. After she finished playing, there was no more movement. She stood up, looked at the cold wall, and worriedly asked, "Miss, are you all right?" You played 2 wrong notes. What answered her was a cold voice with a hint of coldness. Li Wanwan was startled. You made such a big noise just now. Are you sure you didn't go to fight? You can tell that I made a mistake. What kind of ghost are you? Then I'll play again. Li Wanwan whispered. And Gu Jiao brushed her wide sleeves and once again lay back on the rattan chair, leisurely basking in the sun. This time, Li Wanwan was 120% alert and finally didn't make any mistakes. At noon, the patient with the black strip on him woke up. He was an illegal worker. This was confirmed by Gu Chongqing yesterday. In this accident, most of the people who were injured were illegal workers privately hired by the Ministry of Works. They all came from poor families or didn't have any family members, so they ended up like this. However, the other illegal workers at least had a friend come to visit them, but this person didn't have anything for 2 days. He was lying alone on the hospital bed, but his vitality was tenacious and stubborn. His burn area was very large, so he needed to use normal saline to clean the wound every day. It was as painful as scraping his flesh. Dr. Song had just changed his dressing, but he didn't know if it was because his hands were too unfamiliar, but the pain woke him up. Leave this to me, you go see the other patients. Gu Jiao carried a small medicine box into the room. Ah, okay. Dr. Song wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and left the room. Gu Jiao had put black strips on a lot of people. This was a helpless choice, but it was a choice that had to be made. Their survival rate was almost 0, and treating them would lead to the death of a large number of critically ill patients who could be saved. Among all the patients who were judged to have no value in saving, only this one survived. How do you feel? Can you hear me? Gu Jiao put the medicine box on the bedside table, took out a small flashlight, and shone it into his eyes. His pupils responded well. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but his throat was too hoarse and he couldn't make a sound. Gu Jiao understood. She took a tongue depressor and looked at his throat. There's a slight edema and some inflammation. It's not a big problem with some medicine. You'll be able to speak in a few days. Can you hear me? If you can, blink your eyes. He blinked his eyes. His anti-inflammatory medicine was finished, and there was still a bag of rehydration fluid to replenish his electrolytes. Gu Jiao changed the rehydration fluid and adjusted the titer. This bottle is finished after the injection. I'll come back later to pull out the needles for you. Gu Jiao said, packed up the medicine box, and turned to go out. The man's mood suddenly became agitated. Gu Jiao pinched his wrist. His injury was too serious, and his pulse was too fast. It was easy for something to go wrong. Gu Jiao gently comforted him. Don't be agitated. Your injury can be cured. Our medical center will do its best to treat you. You don't have to worry about the medical expenses. The government will pay. However, he was still very agitated. Gu Jiao thought for a moment and asked, Do you want to ask about someone else's situation? If yes, blink your eyes. If not, close your eyes. The man blinked his eyes. Gu Jiao said, Your companion? A craftsman from the government? The man closed his eyes. Gu Jiao, family. The man hesitated for a moment and blinked his eyes. Gu Jiao said, Do you want to ask if your family has come to see you? The man closed his eyes. He had a family, but he didn't ask if his family had come to see him. He was very worried about his family. Is there someone in your family? Gu Jiao asked. The man blinked his eyes heavily. The man couldn't speak, so Gu Jiao had to take the map of the capital. However, Gu Jiao wasn't familiar with the capital, so she couldn't figure out where he was referring to. Gu Chongqing came to the medical center today to find the craftsman who had woken up to investigate the accident. When he heard about Gu Jiao's situation, he came over and said to her, Let me ask. The map of the capital only detailed the streets and not the alleys and houses. Gu Chongqing had been patrolling the capital all year round and was familiar with every corner of the capital. Otherwise, if it was someone else, they wouldn't be able to ask where the man lived. I know. I'll go and inform your family. Gu Chongqing returned the map to Gu Jiao and turned to leave the medical center. Gu Chongqing found the man's residence in the dirtiest and poorest suburb of the capital. It could no longer be called a residence, but a shack that could barely shelter him from the wind and rain. The shack was a mess and empty. There was only the sound of heavy breathing coming from a broken cabinet that was picked up from outside. Gu Chongqing subconsciously pressed down on the sword at his waist. He walked over to the cabinet and carefully opened the door. He saw a little girl with disheveled hair. The little girl was sitting in the cabinet. Her face was dirty and her clothes were tattered. She held a rusty knife in her hands and looked at Gu Chongqing in horror. Gu Chongqing looked at her deeply and stretched out his hand to her. "Jiang Shi asked me to pick you up." Gu Chongqing brought the little girl back to the medical center. Jiang Shi was the name that the man registered in the government office. He was an illegal worker, so the possibility of him being an illegal resident was very high. This name might be an alias. The little girl was Jiang Shi's younger sister. She was thin and small and looked only 5 years old. However, after Gu Jiao checked her teeth, he found that she was already changing teeth. She had 2 permanent teeth, 1 molar, and even the side incisors were beginning to sprout. The side incisors usually sprout at the age of 8 or 9. In other words, she should be at least 8 years old. Gu Jiao also checked her body. Other than being malnourished, she had no other problems. It was just that she was very timid and didn't talk to others. The second boss picked a young maidservant who had a good temper, a good appearance, and seemed to be quite amiable. He had the young maidservant take her to bathe and eat. He also bought her a few new clothes out of his own pocket. The second boss also arranged a separate room for her, but she didn't want to stay there. She wanted to stay with her brother. "Xiao Sanzi, make a bamboo bed for her," the second boss ordered. "Okay." Xiao Sanzi moved a bamboo bed in and placed it next to Jiang Shi's bed. He spread a thick mattress and made a temporary bed for the little girl. The little girl sat on the bed and looked at her brother from time to time. Her brother also looked at her, his eyes full of gentleness. Gu Jiao couldn't help but think of the words he heard in the organization when he was a secret agent in his previous life. Don't fall in love with anyone, and don't have any worries. Once people have worries, they won't dare to die. The little girl leaned on the railing of the bed and held her brother's hand. She knew that her brother was injured, but she didn't know what kind of danger he had gone through. She also didn't know how much willpower her brother had used to crawl back from hell. "Because I'm worried about you, I can't let you die." On the other hand, the emperor knew that Marquis Gu's pleading had been unsuccessful. He didn't know about the situation in Gu Jiao's courtyard. He wasn't so crazy as to spy on the little divine doctor. He only sent someone to keep an eye on Marquis Gu. Marquis Gu entered the clinic on his feet and left lying down. He was found by his subordinate, Huang Zhong. Huang Zhong skillfully carried him onto the carriage. According to the spy's report, it was tragic. The emperor, did he fight with someone? Eunuch Wei, we don't know. We don't dare to ask. However, looking at Marquis Gu's tragic state, his pleading must have failed. The emperor had a rough idea of the little divine doctor's attitude towards Gu Jinyu. The emperor put down the mountain of memorials. "All right, let's go to the clinic." He had something to ask the little divine doctor in person. And his illness. The little divine doctor had said that he would have a checkup every 3 months for a total of 2 years. Eunuch Wei asked, "Is your majesty still traveling incognito? Do you want to wear a bamboo hat this time?" It was necessary to travel incognito. As for the bamboo hat, the emperor thought for a while and wore it. Eunuch Wei had appeared at the clinic yesterday, so the emperor didn't bring him. Instead, he brought Eunuch He, who had accompanied him to the county town. Eunuch He was an inconspicuous eunuch. He didn't even work for the emperor. It was hard for ordinary people to associate him with the emperor. Eunuch Wei felt jealous in his heart. Every time for such an important mission, the emperor would bring along that old bastard, old He. To think that he had served the emperor so well. Even the trip to Jiangnan had nothing to do with him. The emperor had only mentioned the little magic doctor after the event. Eunuch He and the emperor, who was wearing a bamboo hat and a veil, appeared at the clinic together. The second master and shopkeeper Wang had seen Eunuch He and the man in the bamboo hat. However, that was in the small county town. At that time, they were held by a group of martial arts masters. The memory was still fresh. Seeing the two of them again, the second master and shopkeeper Wang instinctively shivered. What's wrong with them? How much hatred did they have against them? Why did they chase them all the way from the county town to the capital? The second master and shopkeeper Wang misunderstood. The emperor didn't bring any martial arts masters with him this time, only the second master and Eunuch He. The emperor lowered his voice and asked in a low voice that he used to talk to people in the county town, "Is that girl here?" Shopkeeper Wang realized that the emperor was asking about Gu Jiao, who had treated him. He pointed at the backyard and said, She's in the back." Before he could finish his words, the emperor had already left with Eunuch He. He went to Gu Jiao's yard with ease. However, the first person he saw was the child he had met on the street last night. The little guy was wearing the elementary school uniform of the Imperial College. He stood at the gate of the yard with his face scrunched up. It seemed that he was worried about something. Jing Kong. The emperor walked over. The little Jing Kong frowned and looked up at him strangely. "Do you know me?" Only then did the emperor remember that he was wearing a bamboo hat with a veil. He smiled and said, "The people in the clinic told me. Are you Jing Kong?" "Yes, I am." The little Jing Kong nodded. The emperor liked this child very much, not only because he was cute, but also because he had done him a big favor. If he hadn't brought him to the clinic by chance, he might not have found out the truth about the accident and the bellows. He already knew that the little Jing Kong was the little miracle-working doctor's younger brother. However, he didn't know that Ma Ki-gu had a younger son among the common people. He didn't know where this younger brother came from. He asked pleasantly, "Is your sister here? Are you looking for Jiao Jiao?" The little Jing Kong spread his hands. "Then you may have to wait. She's treating someone." The emperor asked, "What illness?" The little Jing Kong said, "Bird disease." The emperor was slightly stunned. The little Jing Kong sighed. Alas, these adults are always fooling around outside. They go to Jiao Jiao and break the birds. Then they come to Jiao Jiao to look after the birds. Jiao Jiao is very busy. How can she have time to look after the birds for you stinky men every day? The stinky man learned this from Auntie Zhang next door. He was now at the age where he was learning to speak. He couldn't distinguish between good and bad words. When he heard something, he said it. He even mastered the sharp tone of his words perfectly. The emperor didn't think about it at first, but his expression and tone made him think twice. He broke out in a cold sweat and wondered if this disease was so prevalent in the capital now. Then, he saw a few men coming out with bird cages. "Thank you, Miss Gu. We'll be careful. We won't feed the birds anymore." The men thanked Gu Jiao Jiao and left with myna, parrot, thrush, and other lovebirds. They were finally saved. The corner of the emperor's mouth twitched. "So the birds you mentioned were literally birds?" The little Jing Kong ran over and pointed at the emperor outside the door. "Jiao Jiao. Someone is looking for you." Gu Jiao Jiao looked at the emperor. The emperor was wearing a bamboo hat, so he wasn't worried that she would recognize him. However, a young man who was carrying a bird cage accidentally twisted his foot. The young man reached out and grabbed the emperor's bamboo hat off. His face was exposed with a whoosh. At the critical moment, the emperor pushed Eunuch He into the grass. Eunuch He, who suffered an unexpected disaster, was dumbfounded. The little Jing Kong exclaimed, "Uncle Chu, it's you." He said to Gu Jiao Jiao, "Jiao Jiao Jiao Jiao. He's the handsome uncle from yesterday. He's my classmate's father." Gu Jiao Jiao didn't see Eunuch He. Based on the bamboo hat that fell on the ground, she didn't think that he was the special patient she treated in the county town. Gu Jiao Jiao. "Oh, so the official from yesterday is the little fatty's father." The emperor smiled. He was about to cry. Gu Jiaojiao asked, "Are you here to investigate?" "Yes." The emperor braced himself and answered. Gu Jiaojiao said to the little Jing Kong, "You can play in the yard for a while." "Okay, Jiaojiao." The little Jing Kong was a sensible child. He knew that Jiaojiao was busy, so he skipped away to play. Gu Jiaojiao brought the emperor into the central room and poured him a cup of tea. The emperor looked at the big bowl in front of him and thought that the little magic doctor had a good taste. "What else do you want to know?" Gu Jiaojiao asked. Although Gu Chongqing said yesterday that he would handle the investigation, it was hard to guarantee that the government would collect evidence from many aspects. The emperor did have something to ask her. Since he brought it up, he said, "I'm here for the matter of the bellows. I heard that you invented the bellows, and your sister falsely claimed your credit." "You're wrong," Gu Jiaojiao said. The emperor was stunned. Gu Jiaojiao said, "She's not my sister." She didn't admit it. The emperor smiled embarrassedly. So it was this. He was scared to death. He thought that she didn't invent the bellows. Gu Jiaojiao continued, "Also, I didn't invent the bellows." The emperor had just taken a sip of tea and almost choked when he heard this. "Is she really your sister?" "Not her either." Gu Jiaojiao said, "I learned it from someone else." The emperor's heart skipped a beat. Someone else? From the Liang kingdom? Among the 6 countries, the Liang kingdom was the most advanced in manufacturing. "No, not in this world," Gu Jiaojiao said. When Gu Jiaojiao said "not in this world," the emperor automatically interpreted it as her missing a word. The complete sentence should not be "in this world." The emperor's thoughts were one level deeper than the Marquis of Ding An. He had seen Gu Jiaojiao's medical skills. Gu Jiao was definitely not a normal country girl. Of course, the emperor could not guess that Gu Jiao was a soul that came from another world. He only thought that Gu Jiaojiao had met a hidden expert and was taken in as a disciple. Only, that expert had already passed away. If the emperor thought this, it was not bad. It would save Gu Jiaojiao the trouble of explaining. The emperor suddenly smiled. "You girl, you really aren't greedy for credit." Gu Jiaojiao did not have any interest in these so-called credits. Her original intention was to have her ironwork come out as soon as possible. "Is there anything else to investigate?" she asked. The emperor hesitated a bit and took a deep breath. He smiled and said, "No." He stood up and left. Gu Jiao lightly opened her mouth. "You're not going to see a doctor?" The emperor turned his head. "Ah." Gu Jiao pointed at her own small medicine box. "You've been staring at my medicine box. Could it be that you don't want to see a doctor?" In truth, the emperor had only looked twice. When he came, he looked once. When he left, he looked once. If it was any other girl, they definitely would not have noticed. Otherwise, why would he say that she was amazing? The emperor cleared his throat. "Cough, it's not a big matter. It's just that I kicked off my blankets in the middle of the night and caught a cold. I have a headache and a fever." "Gu Jiao, take off your pants." "Emperor, hey." Wait, it seemed like something was wrong. When Gu Jiao opened the small medicine box, she found that there was an extra syphilis test paper inside. The patients in the medical hall did not need this. There were no visible lesions on the surface of their bodies. They were the same as normal people. But after being together for a few days, she had gradually figured out the pattern of the medicine box. There would not be anything in the medicine box that she did not need, other than those random birth control items. So, there was only one possibility. This person was a healer. In order to further confirm her diagnosis, Gu Jiao took his blood and tested the titer with the test paper. It was true. Seeing that he had recovered well, the emperor raised his eyebrows and said proudly while tying his pants, "You're wrong. I don't have this problem." Gu Jiao took off her gloves. "Come back for a checkup in 3 months." The emperor, "Okay." The emperor went back to the palace in high spirits. He did not know why, but it seemed that every time he came to the small and quiet courtyard of the medical hall, he would be in a good mood. It was as if all his troubles would disappear as soon as he came out of the courtyard. On the way back, he thought a lot about the young magic doctor and Qin Chuyu. When he sent Qin Chuyu to the Imperial College, it was because he found that he was spoiled by the Empress and the people in the palace. He already had 6 sons and the crown prince. It did not matter if Qin Chuyu was successful or not. So, he just left it up to fate to let Qin Chuyu study. The most important thing was to change his personality. But Qin Chuyu was classmates with the young magic doctor's younger brother. Now that she thought about it, Qin Chuyu had actually changed recently. The number of times he cried had decreased, and the number of tyrannical deeds had decreased as well. Yesterday, he casually flipped through his homework. At that time, he was hiding something and did not pay much attention to it. Now that he thought about it carefully, his handwriting seemed to have improved. His thoughts seemed to have run away. The emperor pulled his thoughts back and began to think about the young magic doctor. It was one thing for the little divine doctor to not care about the merit, but it was another thing for the merit to be falsely claimed by others. He had originally intended to give Gu Jinyu a light punishment on account of the old duke's dedication to him despite his age. But now, he would let her stay in the yamen. Also, there was the reward for the young magic doctor. The emperor thought for a long time and felt that it was too vulgar to be worthy of the young magic doctor. She also did not care about the false reputation. The emperor swore that he would choose gifts for the concubines of the 6 palaces. After 2 hours of careful selection, the emperor finally chose a suitable gift for the young magic doctor. The emperor asked Eunuch Wei to go to the medical center and give the gift to the young magic doctor. Eunuch Wei said with a pleasant expression, "My master went to the palace to see His Majesty and told His Majesty about Mississippi. His Majesty said that the credit for the bellows belongs to Mississippi Miss. Please accept His Majesty's reward." Gu Jiao was curious about what the emperor gave her. After Eunuch Wei left, she immediately opened the box. It was such a big and exquisite box, but it was full of decorations. There was only a brush lying in it. Gu Jiao, who was harmed by the brush, was speechless. This was not an ordinary brush. It was the emperor's imperial brush. There was the emperor's personal seal on it and the emperor's fingerprints that he had used for many years. This was something that all the scholars and concubines of the 6 palaces wanted. However, in Gu Jiao's eyes, wasn't this just a brush? It was a second-hand brush. Gu Jiao, who did not want to write with a brush, despised it so much. She sold the emperor's imperial brush. The buyer was Zhuang Mengdai. This is the imperial brush. You really want to sell it? No matter how stupid Zhuang Mengdai was, she could recognize that this was something used by the emperor. No one in the world would dare to fake it. Gu Jiao said, "Do you want to buy it or not? If you don't want to buy it, I will sell it to someone else." "Who said I don't want to buy it?" Zhuang Mengdai grabbed the brush. "Name a price." Gu Jiao said casually, 5,000 taels. Zhuang Mengdai stared. "So expensive." Gu Jiao reached for the brush. "Don't buy it if you think it is expensive." Zhuang Mengdai held the brush tightly. I will buy it." Gu Jiao replied, "I'm going back on my word. 7,000 taels." Zhuang Mengdai. Gu Jiao finally sold the second-hand brush at the price of 8,000 taels. There was another thing in the box. It was a golden plate. She did not know what the plate was for, but it was made of pure gold. Gu Jiao kept it. Little Jing Kong liked gold. She would give it to him to play with later. Gu Jiao did not go to Ho Fu for a few days. In fact, she used to go there less often, but now she felt that it was not enough. After she sent little Jing Kong back to buy Shui Alley, she planned to go to Ho Fu. Coincidentally, Gu Chongqing came with a pair of birds. Well, they were not for them to play with, but to make food for the baby eagles. Yes, the baby eagles were much bigger now. They were not satisfied with chicken feed. The brother and sister went back to Ho Fu. Before they parted, Gu Chongqing stopped her. "I have blocked the news about the incident in the yamen and Gu Jinyu. Madam does not know about it for now." Gu Jiao said, thank you. Madame Yao could not take any provocation. Gu Chongqing opened his mouth. You don't have to be so polite with me. Gu Jiao looked at him strangely. It seemed easier to admit it in front of others. Gu Chongqing clenched his fists, and a trace of uneasiness flashed across his face. You are my younger sister. After he said that, he seemed to be afraid that Gu Jiao would refuse or laugh at him. He did not wait for Gu Jiao's response and left without looking back. Gu Jiao looked at his back. Oh. At this time, the residents had just finished dinner, so it was still early. However, when Gu Jiao arrived at Madame Yao's courtyard, Madame Yao had already fallen asleep on the chaise lounge. She was holding an unfinished garment in her hand. It was Gu Jiao's summer dress. Nanny Fong carefully took the garment from her hand. When she turned around, she saw Gu Jiao walk in. She whispered, "Eldest Mississippi." Gu Jiao walked lightly to the chaise lounge. She looked at Madame Yao and said, "Madame is sleeping so early?" Nanny Fong successfully took out the garment, tied the needle and thread, and put it in the embroidery basket, saying, "Yes, I have been sleepy recently." Gu Jiao sat down on the chaise lounge. "Brighten the oil lamp." Okay. Nanny Fong used a piece of iron to stir the wick in the oil lamp. Gu Jiao checked Madame Yao's pulse and asked Nanny Fong, "How is Madame's appetite?" "Not very good." Nanny Fong said. "What about your menstruation?" Gu Jiao asked. "It just came a few days ago." Nanny Fong said, "Eldest Miss suspects that Madame." Gu Jiao gently put Madame Yao's wrist under the quilt. "It's not a suspicion." Madame Yao woke up in a daze. When she opened her eyes, she saw Gu Jiao. She was stunned and thought that she was dreaming. "Jiao Jiao?" "Yes, it's me." Gu Jiao nodded. Madame Yao's mood became very good. She sat up and pulled Gu Jiao's hand. "When did you come? Have you been here for a long time? Why didn't you wake me up?" Gu Jiao said, "I just came." Madame Yao looked at the sky. "You haven't eaten yet, right? I'll have someone set the table." "There's no hurry." Gu Jiao looked at her. Madame Yao vaguely felt that Gu Jiao had something to say. "Jiao Jiao, is there something wrong?" Gu Jiao nodded, and her eyes fell on her flat belly. "You are pregnant." Madame Yao was shocked. She was pregnant? How could she be pregnant? When she gave birth to Yen and Jiao Jiao prematurely in the temple, after returning to the capital, the doctor said that she gave birth prematurely. She didn't take care of herself well, so her vitality was damaged. It would be difficult for her to get pregnant again in this life. Madame Yao looked at her belly in disbelief. Madame has been taking medicine. Will there be any problems?" Nanny Fong thought of Madame Yao's antidepressants. Gu Jiao shook her head. "It's fine." She had already changed her medicine to vitamin and calcium tablets. Nanny Fong put her hands together. "Amit Ba, Bodhisattva bless you." Madame Yao still found it hard to digest this fact. It wasn't that she didn't like this child, but she looked at her belly and then looked at Gu Jiao. A trace of anxiety flashed through her eyes. "Jiao Jiao, do you want a younger brother or sister?" Gu Jiao seriously thought about it and nodded. "N." After learning that she was pregnant, the first thought that flashed through Madame Yao's mind was whether Jiao Jiao and Yen could accept it. If they didn't accept it, then it meant that she didn't give them enough love. She didn't have the right to have another child. Yen will also like it," Gu Jiao said. "How do you know?" Madame Yao asked. "Fraternal twins. If Gu Yen didn't like it, then she wouldn't like this little life at this time." She could feel that there was another kind of joy in her heart. It was Gu Yan's joy. Madame Yao touched her belly. Was there really a little life here? Did she have another chance to be a mother? Madame Yao thought of something and said, "But I just had my period a few days ago." This kind of situation is relatively rare, but it's not impossible. Is my fetus unstable? No. Gu Jiao shook her head. The pulse of pregnancy is very strong. When her mood improved, her body would naturally improve. In the past, she didn't even have enough time to worry about Gu Yen, so how could she have the energy to properly care for herself? After Gu Jiao took care of everything, her body also improved day by day. Come live with me. Gu Jiao suddenly looked at her and said seriously, "It's not because you don't have a place to go, and it's not because I'm forcing myself to accept you. I really want you to move over." As she said this, she paused and lowered her eyes. She was a little unaccustomed to the unfamiliar feeling in her heart. She twiddled her fingers. At night. I will miss you. Madame Yao's eyes immediately became moist. Her nose became incomparably sore, and her throat began to hurt. These words moved her even more than hearing that she was pregnant. She covered her mouth, not allowing herself to cry out loud. Her Jiao Jiao, how could it be so good? So good. On the other hand, after Marquis Gu was beaten beyond recognition, he spent an entire afternoon in a daze in the carriage before waking up. The first thing he did was go to Madame Yao's place to find comfort. After being beaten so badly by that girl, only seeing Madame Yao could comfort his wounded heart. However, when Marquis Gu returned to the manor, what awaited him was an empty courtyard. Madame Yao was nowhere to be found. Wu! Where was his wife? The newest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_826482113648110. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com BQGE's mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.